Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Benjamin, have we finally waited for our daughter to get married? Lauren was making herself pretty in the mirror. I can't believe it. I want Kayla to be happy at last. Benjamin adjusted his shirt, shook invisible dust from his pants, looked at his watch. Time to go to the guests. Excitement reigned in the bride's room. Kayla stood by the huge mirror and waited impatiently for her to finish lacing her dress, her friends chattering merrily. "Oh, Kayla, what a beautiful bride you are," one of her friends said admiringly. "It suits you so well. Your Matthew will die of happiness when he sees you." "Oh, no. She pretended to be scared. I want to see him alive and well. You and he are perfect for each other. Such a beautiful couple, and your dress is incomparable. If I knew that ready bought, I would have thought that sewn to order sits on you just like fit." "Oh, we're talking." Nora, the bride's best friend, looked out the window. "And there's the groom." "Kayla, don't go out to him yet." "Why not?" "Do you really believe a stupid omen?" Kayla impatiently looked out from behind her friend's back, trying to see the groom. "Let's not break tradition. We'll go down to the guests, and we'll call you to the registration." The girls went down the stairs decorated with colorful garlands. "And when did they have time to put a balloon arch at the entrance?" asked one of the girls. "Look, in the corners of the living room, bouquets of balloons." Immediately appeared a sense of festivity. "Yeah, there are little tables set up for guests everywhere. I want champagne." "You what?" Her friends told her off. "It's still early. What will the hosts say to us if we get drunk before everyone else?" "We're just a little bit." Guiltily replied the girl. "Let's go outside, shall we?" On the lawn in front of the house was a tent in which the employees of the marriage institution. Two women in bright summer dresses, with gorgeous hairstyles on their heads, were talking animatedly while waiting for the newlyweds. The solemnity of the atmosphere was added by intertwined, huge rings on the back wall of the tent. In the shade of fruit trees, there were tables set with appetizers and glasses filled with wine. It really is a marvelous arrangement here. The bride caught up with her friends, and now together with them plunged into the atmosphere of the upcoming party. "Kayla, why did you leave the room?" She was surrounded by her friends. "What if Matthew sees you?" "I can't stay locked up with guests in the house." The girl was shining with happiness. She couldn't wait to share her cheerful mood with everyone. Kayla smiled welcomingly at those invited to the party. "Kayla," a stylish middle-aged woman hugged her. "Congratulations! You and Matthew look just wonderful." The girl accepted congratulations from all sides, bowed in gratitude to the guests, and smiled. "It's indecent to be so openly happy." Nora whispered in her ear. "About half of the women here, you are envious." "What can I do if I'm happy?" The bride was beautiful. Her thick blonde hair was styled with a tiara. Her light makeup made her face more expressive, her blue eyes looking at the world with rapt attention. "Kayla," an acquaintance of her parents approached her. "Congratulations, you look very beautiful today. Where is the groom?" "I don't know." Blushing with pleasure, the girl replied. "I haven't seen him today." "You are just made for each other." The woman squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Kayla." Suddenly she heard the voice of the groom. "I've been looking for you. Come quickly to me. I missed you so much. What are you doing?" The bridesmaid stopped him. "Don't you dare go near her. It's bad luck. Just be patient. The party starts in 15 minutes. But I just wanted to kiss her." Matthew tried unsuccessfully to make out his fiancée in the crowd. "You'll get over it," one of the girls told him. You have a long and happy life ahead of you. You'll kiss again." Upset Matthew disappeared into the crowd. Honored guests, parents, bride, and groom. Finally, the toastmaster announced, it was time for the marriage ceremony to begin. The guests, laughing and chatting, reached the tent, where the music was already playing, and the employee of the marriage ceremony, in the microphone, invited everyone to come closer. "Kayla," the bridesmaids took the bride under the arms. "Come on, the groom's probably waiting." "Yes, come on, the wedding will not wait." "Don't worry," said one of the girls, noticing how Kayla's hands were trembling. "All is well. The guests are in place. The fun is starting. Where's Matthew?" Looking around at those present, the bride asked, "Where did he disappear to?" The guy was offended. Someone answered from the crowd. They chased him away. The guests laughed and began to shout, "Matthew, come out. The bride is waiting for you." Don't be afraid. Marriage is not scary at all. It's even pleasant. Or maybe he was afraid of the first wedding night. The men teased the groom. It happens. "Matthew, we can stand at the door for support." "Dad?" Kayla was about to cry. "Where's Matthew?" "Have you seen him?" "Yeah, he's around here somewhere." "He can't have gone far. Don't be nervous. Maybe the man had to go out on his own. Let's wait a minute. Guys," the girl looked back at the groom's buddies. "Where's your friend?" "Yeah, he's around here somewhere. He'll be right with you. He knows it's time to get the party started. Some woman came to talk to him. A relative of yours, I think. Maybe your mom?" said Kevin. "They left together and have not yet returned." Kayla always disliked Kevin. She thought he had too much influence over her boyfriend. "My mom is next to me." Kayla took her mother's hand. "Where's Matthew?" Kevin shrugged his shoulders. "I have no idea. Let's look for him. He couldn't have really run away, could he? Or maybe you're the one who tried to talk him out of marrying me." "Why?" The young man stared at her perplexedly. "I have no reason to upset your wedding." "Kayla," Nora snapped at her. "Don't be crazy, your Matthew's coming. What's the guy got to do with it? He always looks at me like he doesn't want me to marry Matthew. Maybe he likes you." The friend tried to lead the distraught bride away from the house. "Well, do you want us to go through all the rooms with you?" "I do." "I have to find my fiancé." "I hope this isn't some stupid joke to tickle your nerves." Kayla walked up the steps into the house, looking in every room. Nora followed her. "Kayla, calm down. Maybe Matthew had a drink and fell asleep," she urged. "I think he's outside. He's lying on a bench somewhere in the shade. Yes, and he can't hear the noise of the guests." Kayla was concentrating on opening one door after another, not paying attention to her friend. "We've been through almost every room. You can see he's not in the house. Let's go outside. They must have found him by now. Now they can't wait for us." "Wait, I haven't checked my parents' bedroom yet." "Are you crazy? What would he be doing in their bedroom? He's not an idiot. Come on, don't get yourself worked up." Kayla, not listening to her, had already opened the door. "Well," Nora pounced on her when the girl suddenly stopped like a stumbling block. "Did you make sure there's no one in there? Let's go to the guests. What are you standing there for?" Her friend looked over the bride's shoulder and gave a quiet ouch. Kayla, on her parents' wide bed, the naked bodies of Matthew, Kayla's husband-to-be, and Lara, her aunt, her father's sister, were entwined in a passionate embrace. The lovers were sound asleep, not the least bit afraid of being caught off guard. The girl turned around and silently ran to her room without noticing anything around her. Kayla, Nora could barely keep up with her, frantically thinking of what to do. "Wait, don't be so hot." Stop, please. What are you going to do? Kayla flew into the room, ripped the tiara out of her hair, threw it on the floor, and then began to remove her dress. The thin fabric immediately ripped. Kayla, don't do this, please. Her friend rushed to her, wanting to hug her, to comfort her somehow, but Kayla pushed her away. Help me get it off. Pulling the laces from behind, the bride said, otherwise I'll rip it. Kayla, don't do anything stupid. Nora coaxed her, helping her with the lacing, not stopping me. Kayla had already changed into a casual outfit when there was a noise and laughter in the hallway. Is there anything I can help you with? Nora asked in desperation, looking at her friend sympathetically. How can you help me? I want to die. Kayla, my friend. The girl hugged her. Is he worth your life? I believe you're in a lot of pain right now, but I know you'll be able to bear it with dignity. Shall we go to the guests? I don't want to see anyone. Help me sneak out of the house, distract them for a minute. But you'll have to explain yourself. You can't just walk away. I'm with you, you'll be fine. Nora released her from the hug, squeezed her hand tightly, as if she wanted to convey her confidence and strength. Kayla looked at her silently and left the room. Kayla, where are you going to disappear to? Her father snapped at her. He was in a cheerful mood. First, Matthew, now you've disappeared. I hope you're not going to sneak away from us and get married in secret somewhere. That would be very romantic, but the guests are waiting. They want to party. The guests, who took part in the search for the groom, laughed and clapped their hands. My daughter? Her mother asked, noticing that Kayla had changed her clothes. Where is the wedding dress? Why did you take it off? The smile slowly fell off her face. By the feverish gleam in Kayla's eyes, the woman realized something was wrong. There's the groom. The father was relieved to see Matthew in the crowd. Well, thank God, everyone's here. Where have you been, you wretch? The bride and guests have been looking for you. And he was busy. Kayla shouted sarcastically, looking contemptuously at Matthew. The guests fell silent. What would happen next? He slept with your sister. In your and Mom's bedroom, by the way. She was choking back tears. The last thing she wanted to do right now was cower in a corner and not see anyone. But she knew she couldn't avoid talking to her parents. What are you talking about? Her father looked from his daughter to Matthew and Lara with horror. Kayla was frightening to look at, her face slim, her eyes so sad that Benjamin wanted to grab his daughter to hold her close to protect her from harm. Matthew did not raise his eyes. His face was crimson. Only Lara looked at her brother defiantly. My God! The man clutched his head. Lara, are you crazy? What are you doing? I'm sorry. There was not a shadow of remorse in the woman's voice. I couldn't resist. Matthew is such a sweet boy. She ran her hand over the young man's cheek, and he blushed even more. So cute and so passionate in bed, she laughed. Lucky you, niece. Lara looked at the girl mockingly. Do you realize what you've done? Benjamin said, looking angrily at his younger sister. You seduced the husband of my daughter, your niece. How dare you, on their wedding day? He is not my husband, corrected Kayla indifferently. Fiancé, now ex-fiancé. It doesn't matter. My father dismissed it. You ruined my daughter's happiness. What shame! What are we going to say to the people at the party? I want to remind you, little brother. Lara said mockingly, I paid for this whole party. What are you worried about, Benjamin? No one was left out of pocket. Now we all calm down, pick up snot, wipe tears, dress up, and as if nothing had happened, go to the guests. They have long been eager to start the holiday. Let's not deprive them of it. Dear guests, She turned to the guests who had gathered in a cluster. "Let's go down to the garden, drink, and be merry. Now the hosts will sort out this little misunderstanding, and we will finally begin the ceremony." The guests talked quietly amongst themselves and went down to the garden. Sweet Auntie. Kayla held herself together with all her might. It was so vile on her soul, as if she had been dumped in the mud. "Let this feast be yours. I don't even mind if you want to marry Matthew. He's all yours now. Whatever you want to do. He has no obligations to me. I release him from them and won't interfere with your little pranks. Isn't that what you wanted?" The woman only snorted contemptuously and followed the guests. Kayla's gaze fell casually on Lara's husband, who couldn't understand what all the fuss was about. There was a mute question in his eyes and anxiety on his face. "Uncle Gary?" She turned to him. "I'm sorry. Please forgive me, and I'm sorry. I can't stay here anymore. I'm stuffy." Kayla headed for the exit of the house. "Stop right now." She heard her father's voice. "I'm not done. We need to talk. Come back now." "I'm sorry, Dad." The girl shrugged. "I'm not in the mood to talk right now. I know everything you're going to tell me, so we can safely postpone the heartwarming conversation until tomorrow. Spare me the explanations now. You can't just walk away. Why don't we just calm down and pretend it never happened? You know we owe everything to Lara." "Yes, Dad," Kayla said tiredly. "I remember that we owe Aunt Lara everything, that we depend on her. Everything we have is hers. You work for her. I hear those words day in and day out, and there's nothing we can do about it. We have to put up with it. But that doesn't mean she has the right to seduce my future husband. We don't know who seduced who." Benjamin tried to stand up for his sister. "Dad, don't be a laughingstock. It's obvious who's who. Are you trying to protect her now? I realize we have to do something to keep the guests happy, and you're sorry if the money's wasted." "Really, daughter?" Benjamin blushed at her words. "The guests are in the house. The tables are set. It's awkward. We'll talk about it later, so we're late. Shall we go to the people? We can't really cancel the wedding. There's nothing wrong." "Nothing?" "Your daughter has just been treated like dirt. Don't pretend you don't realize the scandal your sister's gotten us into. Don't exaggerate." Father frowned. "Stop your hysterics. There will be a wedding no matter what." "No, Dad," the girl said firmly. "I'm tired of groveling. There won't be a wedding, and there's no need to think of anything. I'm sure you'll find the right words to explain yourself to the guests." "Well, what are we going to tell them?" At a loss, asked the bewildered father. The mother was crying quietly on the sidelines. "If you want, say that I am crazy and I urgently need to be placed in an asylum. I don't care, but rather reveal the truth. Then no one will have any questions." Kayla headed for the exit of the house. No one got in her way. No one tried to stop her. She came upon her aunt, met her eyes for a moment, and walked on. Lara had a haughty smile on her face. "That would be something to worry about, little brother." Lara grinned and spoke. "She will run and come back. How will she live without money? You'll see she'll be home tonight. Where will she go without you? She's offended, you see. Has she lost it? Don't you realize what you've done? Benjamin attacked her. Why did you do all this? Everything was going so well, you couldn't stand it. I had a little fun." The woman looked at her brother unhappily. "I promise, I won't do it again, even if you don't pout at me. I don't understand how it occurred to you to go to bed with that boy, and even a few minutes before the wedding, with guests and a husband in the house. Haven't you had enough of mature men? You got into our bed, too. Why? Sporting interest." Lara laughed. "What can I do if I like young, handsome men?" He was pleased, by the way. Would your daughter be able to give him what I gave him? She's no good in bed. Now he knows how a wife should please her husband, and that's a lesson to her. Don't flick your beak. You have to keep a man in your sights at all times. I'm shocked. If you dare me again. Benjamin's voice is filled with metallic tones. Interfere in my daughter's life? I? What you? What will you do, Benjamin? Lara squinted her eyes. Remind you where you belong. Don't you forget yourself. Don't you ever raise your voice to me. Enough moralizing, it's time to go down to the guests. Think what you're going to say to them if you can't talk sense into your daughter. On the lawn, the guests languished in ignorance. The employees of the marriage institution impatiently looked at the clock. The appearance of the owners of the house was greeted with applause. What happened? It was coming from all directions. It's time to start the party. Our throats are already dry, and we haven't had a poppy in our mouths since morning. Where's the bride? Where's the groom gone again? Why do you always lose them? Dear guests, trembling from the excitement, said Benjamin, I have to inform you that there will be no wedding. What do you mean there won't be a wedding? What's the matter? Is someone dead sick? The crowd erupted again. There have been unforeseen circumstances. Please forgive us for spoiling the holiday. The guests chattered indignantly and slowly began to disperse. And I want to have fun. A cheerful voice suddenly sounded on the lawn. Why are the guests leaving? It has begun. Rolling her eyes to the sky, Lara said, her husband, holding a champagne glass in his hand and not firmly on his feet, blocked the way. Calm your husband down, Benjamin asked. We don't need another scandal. Gary, shall we go home? The woman spoke affectionately, taking her husband under her arm. The party is already over. Darling, the man, swaying with cloudy eyes, stared at his wife. I don't want to go home. I want to have fun. Why is everyone leaving? Stop them. He nimbly grabbed the arm of one of the guests, trying to hold on, but the man pushed him away sharply. Gary lost his balance and fell right onto the appetizer table. There was a pitiful clinking of clinking glasses. Champagne spilled. No drunken man screamed. What's the pity? That's how money goes in the sand. He laughed drunkenly and crawled on his knees, trying to pick up the sandwiches that had fallen into the grass. Hey, waiter, bring the tray. What's the point of wasting it? Enough, Lara said sternly. She took her husband under her arm and tried to get him to his feet. Get up. Damn you. Let's go home. When did you get so drunk? Leave me alone. He yanked his arm out. Don't touch me. It's a shame we didn't get to go to the wedding. The day was ruined. Benjamin, Lara threw an angry look at her brother. What are you standing there for? Help me get him in the car. Can't you see he's out of his mind? Drunk Gary was picked up and led to the car. I don't want to leave. He wouldn't go. Benjamin, tell her we haven't had a toast to the young ones yet. Matthew, Kayla, be happy, guys, shouted the man, breaking out of his arms. Love each other. Bitter. Why doesn't anyone yell bitter? Be happy. Tears sprang from his eyes. Lara, he cried, I love you. Let me kiss you. Benjamin, tell her we must celebrate your daughter's wedding. Gary, calm down. Benjamin urged him. We'll drink to the health of the young couple, but now go home. They got him into the car. Lara nodded goodbye to her brother and drove off. Finally, all the guests left. Benjamin sat with his wife in the tent on the lawn and looked sadly at the set tables. He smoked one cigarette after another. Evelyn cried quietly. What a beautiful couple they could have been. I was so happy when Kayla confessed that she had fallen in love with Matthew. literally from the first time she met him. Do you think his daughter will forgive him? Of course she will. She's a sensible girl, Benjamin said thoughtfully, remembering the evenings when the young man first stepped on the threshold of their house. Daughter, Benjamin, rubbing his hands together, entered his daughter's room. I want you to meet a very interesting young man. I hope he will be a good husband for you and a reliable business partner for me. And when I'm old, he'll be the head of the firm. What can I do if God didn't give me and my mother a son? I have to figure out who to leave my inheritance to. Dad, Kayla laughed, looking at her father. Do you seriously think I'm going to marry the man you choose for me? I'd like to believe that your first concern is for your daughter's happiness and then your business partner. Of course I am, silly. Her father kissed her on the cheek. But I don't want some gambler, without a tribe and without a family, to turn your head and take over the management of our firm. Remember history. Rich parents always try to make their daughter happy. Have you forgotten that this is the 21st century? I think I can arrange my own life. I'm sure you'll like Matthew, and you'll thank me later. He's a young, but very smart and promising young man, and he's already running one of the divisions of his father's company. If we merge the business, which I don't doubt at all, we'll be so strong, no competitors will be afraid of us. I hope he's at least handsome. The girl sighed tunefully. Yes, he is. I'm sure you'll like him right away. My mother and I wish you nothing but happiness. Darling, Mother intervened in the conversation. When will your acquaintance come to us? I think, in a couple of days, and you, daughter, put on your best dress. Try to impress him. It won't be hard for you. You're a beauty. Kayla, without noticing it, was looking forward to the appearance of the young man in their house. Everything was ready for the meeting. The girl looked furtively at her watch and still shuddered with surprise when the doorbell rang. Matthew? She heard it and felt her heart race. Come in, please. Don't be shy. Make yourself at home. The young man entered the living room after his father. This is my wife, Evelyn, and this is my daughter, Kayla. The new acquaintance gave each of them a bouquet of flowers, handed a bottle of cognac to her father, and kissed first her mother's hand, then Kayla's. Goosebumps ran down the girl's skin. It's very nice to meet you. Matthew looked at the girl with interest. She blushed with pleasure. The young man was really handsome in Holland. The father was not deceived. Kayla thought with a laugh. We should take a closer look at him. Maybe we can really have something. Why are we standing here? Her mother came to her senses. Let's go to the table. Everything's ready. Matthew kept his eyes on Kayla. She was embarrassed under his piercing gaze. There was much talk of business at the table. Benjamin praised Matthew for his entrepreneurial spirit, admired his success. Kayla was mostly silent, listening to her guest's leisurely pace of conversation. You excuse me. Finally, the young man rose from the table. I have to go, unfortunately. Oh, that's too bad. Evelyn was saddened. But you'll come again, won't you? We had such a good time. I will. The guests bowed ceremoniously to their hosts. It was a pleasure to meet you. Kayla, my daughter. Her father addressed her. Show Matthew out. The young people went outside. Kayla, the young man spoke to her. Let's go to the movies, shall we? Do you like movies or do you prefer the theater? I don't know, the girl was confused. We still know each other so little. I think I've known you for a long time. Trying to catch her eye, said Matthew. If someone had told me that Benjamin had such a beautiful daughter, I would have asked to visit. So, shall we go to the movies? Well, okay. The girl answered shyly, unable to resist the charm of her new acquaintance. And what picture will we watch? It doesn't matter. just to spend this evening next to you." He was silent for a moment. "And let's put aside the ceremonies and go to you." "I agree." Kayla laughed. "Give me your phone number. I'll call you and arrange a meeting." They exchanged phone numbers. "It was a pleasure to meet you." The young man kissed her cheek. The girl blushed with pleasure. Matthew got into the car, honked his horn, and drove away, and Kayla lost her peace. She immediately started calling her friend Nora. "You can't imagine how handsome he is," she said dreamily, "and how smart he is. So speaks well. I was listening to him. I'm sure I won't be bored with him." "Beauty is not the point," Nora warned her. "He doesn't miss a single skirt. Why should you be so happy? You think it's easy to love a man who cheats? It's not a joke. So what? When we get married, he'll be completely different, you'll see. My love will do wonders for him. It's just that he's searching for his ideal. And you've decided that Matthew's ideal is you?" "I'm sure he is," Kayla said enthusiastically. "No man can compare to him. He's every woman's dream. How many men have you seen to compare?" snorted her friend. "You've only known him for a little while, and you're ready to jump into marriage. What if it's love at first sight? You're stupid. You will have more than one night to cry into your pillow because of him, knowing that he is somewhere with another spends the evening. Think before you speak, yeah. It's easy to lose your freedom, but you don't want to have to bite the bullet. And I believe he'll be all mine. I can make sure he never looks at another woman again. You don't doubt me, do you?" "I don't doubt you, but I don't doubt him. The humped man can only be fixed by the grave," Nora said doubtfully. "You'll cry with him." The young people began to see each other. Matthew could not see his beloved every day, because the business took too much time, but the meetings were always long-awaited and joyful. Not being able to see each other often, they called each other on the phone every evening. Sometimes they chatted until the wee hours of the morning. "Kayla, how would you like to go to a nightclub together?" "Relax, have some fun." "I'm in." The girl said yes. "It's been so long since I've been there." "Then I'll pick you up tonight?" "Okay, I'll be waiting. I miss you." "I miss you too. See you later." "Bye." Kayla lay in bed for a long time, smiling into the darkness of the night, Matthew's voice in her ears. "Daughter, why are you glowing like that?" Looking suspiciously at her daughter, Evelyn asked in the morning. "Mommy." Kayla threw herself on her mother's neck. "Matthew invited me to the club. So that's just great. I'm happy for you, dear." "Matthew, he's a wonderful boy, so reliable, and I feel so safe when you're with him." That's what a real man should be. The day of waiting for the meeting flew by. Kayla heard the sound of a car and ran outside. Matthew appeared with a huge bouquet of flowers. "Hi, these are for you." The young man held out the roses to her. "Thank you." The girl buried her nose in the flowers. "I'll put them in a vase and we can go." She went back into the house. What a magnificent bouquet! Her mother gasped as she accepted the flowers. "Matthew spoils you." "Mommy, he's so thoughtful." The girl quickly hugged her mother and ran away. The young people got into the car and went to rest. The club was crowded. "It's great here." Kayla, smiling, looked at the young man. "When I'm with you." Taking her hand, Matthew spoke. "I feel good everywhere. Kayla, I really like you. I've never met anyone like you. You're extraordinary. You can say that too." The girl was embarrassed. "I'm ordinary. There are thousands of them." "No, you're special." "Once again, I thank your father in my mind. I really don't want to part with you. When I don't see you, it seems that all the light fades before my eyes." Kayla listened to his voice and was ready to hug the whole world. I have another free night tomorrow," Matthew said as they sat at a table drinking a cocktail after dancing. "Shall we go to the restaurant? I need to have a serious talk with you. Tell me now, or I'll die of curiosity before tomorrow. No, it's uncomfortable here. I want us to have a festive atmosphere around us." Kayla's heart squeezed with excitement. "Will you come? Well, what do you want to talk about? I'm not telling you that yet. I want to surprise you. It'll be a nice surprise." Kayla was so nervous she was almost late for her date. In the restaurant, she was met by the receptionist and, smiling mysteriously, led her to a table hidden from prying eyes by a curtain. The girl's legs were shaking from worry. When the receptionist pulled back the drape, Kayla gasped. In the center of the table, there was a small bouquet of flowers, candles were burning, and the central wall was decorated with flowers made of balloons, ribbons, glowing garlands. "I've been waiting for you." Matthew stood up to meet her. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming." "I'm sorry," the girl said, embarrassed. "I was late. I was a little out of time." The young man gave her a hand and helped her sit down at the table. "I didn't know there were such nice places in this restaurant. Do you go to the restaurant often?" Matthew raised his eyebrows in surprise. "No, I don't," Nora protested. "But no one I know who frequents the restaurant has ever told me that." Meanwhile, the waiter brought appetizers and poured wine into glasses. "Have I told you before that you're very beautiful?" Matthew raised his glass. "You are a mystery to me, a magic. You've done the unbelievable. I'm not interested in anyone but you. No woman in the world compares to you. You're my cosmos, my unattainable dream." Kayla blushed with pleasure at these words. She was afraid to frighten her guesses, but in her heart, she secretly waited for Matthew to say the long-awaited words, "I would like to live with you all my life." The girl's heart was ready to jump out of her chest. "I have a surprise for you." At these words, the parterres slid apart and the magician entered. The girl laughed merrily. "What a surprise! I've long since come out of childhood. We are all children at heart." "Philosophically," Matthew replied, "this is only the beginning. The main surprise is ahead." The magician, making some incredible movements with his hands, took out a live rose from the depths of his tailcoat and handed it to Kayla. Then he took her right hand in his palms, mumbled something to himself, and suddenly released her hand. "Matthew!" Kayla's breath caught, and on her ring finger was a ring of two thin, delicate, intertwined rings of white and yellow gold. On top it was set with 3 small diamonds, which shimmered with sparkles in the glow of candles and garlands. "It's just unbelievably beautiful." She looked up at him with eyes full of admiration. "But how did the magician slip the ring onto my finger?" "I felt nothing at all." The man, smiling, bowed in a bow. "A sleight of hand and no fraud." He replied, bowed once more, and disappeared behind the parterres as suddenly as he had appeared. "My dear, will you marry me?" Satisfied with the effect he had produced, Matthew waited for an answer. "Yes, of course I will marry you." Tears sprang from Kayla's eyes. "Why are you crying? This is so unexpected, so unusual." "I'm crying with happiness. I love you. And I love you madly. I think there is no one in the world happier than me." The young man took her hand and kissed it tenderly. "I am also happy that such a girl reciprocated me." She looked adoringly at Matthew. "Now we have to announce to everyone that we are going to get married. The days until the wedding will drag on for an agonizingly long time, but I'm willing to wait as long as it takes, because the reward is you." They reached toward each other and fell into a long kiss. After dinner at the restaurant, Matthew walked Kayla home. They decided to make the wedding announcement, bringing both families together. Nora? The girl secluded herself in her room and immediately started calling her friend. Matthew proposed to me. We're getting married. I was afraid he'd never want to commit to me, and then it happened. And you said yes, of course. Yes, she laughed. You don't know how happy I am? I didn't expect him to ask me to be his bride so soon, and yet in my heart I waited. He's so sweet. He's mine now, forever, and I'll never give him up. Tell me you're happy for me. Fool, you're in love. My friend sighed heavily. You don't see anything. You don't want to listen to anyone. You'll regret not believing me later. You ignored all my warnings. You're wrong about him. He's changed. Why would he go out with other people when he's got me? And once we're married, I'll be surrounded by so much care and attention that he won't even want to look elsewhere. Knave. Nora sighed again. You're not thinking straight now, though. Do what you want, but don't come crying to me about your Matthew's cheating. I won't. Kayla lowered her voice. But promise me you'll be godmother to our children. Kayla ran outside, and Kevin was standing on the porch. It looked like he was waiting for her. Shall I take you out of here? Asked the guy. You waited for me on purpose to enjoy the triumph? Look, rejoice. I don't have a fiancé anymore. Kayla was shaking, eyes glittering with feverish fire. I want to help you. Shall we go? He opened the car door. Yes. Kayla quickly got into the back seat. Where are we going? Kevin asked and started the car. I don't know. Muffled, the girl answered. The main thing is to get away from here. They drove in silence for a while. Kayla looked out the window. Her mind was empty. Did you know he was cheating on me with Aunt Lara? The girl asked. Kevin gripped the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles turned white. Yeah. Yes, I knew. Finally, he spoke. I talked him out of this unholy affair. I told Matthew to stop, to think about the fact that he would soon have a family. I warned him against it, warned him that you'd find out one day anyway, but he wouldn't listen to anything. It was as if she'd bewitched him. You mean? Kayla said slowly, that this meeting wasn't a coincidence? That wasn't the first time they'd been together. Shit! Kevin cursed. I'm sorry, I thought you'd known about their connection for a long time. No, I didn't know anything. She whispered, tears streaming from her eyes. Why did he do this to me? All I could think about was him, believing him, and not seeing the obvious. Nora was right. I really am a naive fool. Kevin felt guilty in front of her. Damn it, I should have told her, he thought. It was hard for him to look at the crying girl. Kayla, you try to calm down. I'm sure Matthew is sorry for what happened. He'll definitely come to you, apologize, and you'll make up. Who doesn't? Lara seduced him, and he couldn't resist. She's an experienced woman. You know what? Wiping her tears, Kayla suddenly said, Take me to a bar or even a nightclub. I don't want to go home. In fact, I want a drink. Kevin nodded. Good for you, that's better. He said and drove the car to the nightclub. Kayla entered the room and went straight to the bar. Is something wrong? The bartender asked, noticing her mascara running down her cheeks. Yes, she answered briefly, pulling out a mirror and a paper napkin from her purse. I want a drink. The girl cleaned herself up and took a few deep breaths, trying to regain her composure. Kayla, my treat. Kevin lowered himself onto a nearby chair and ordered a cocktail for himself and Kayla. She took the straw out of the glass and drained it. Are you crazy? Kevin exclaimed. Yes, I was crazy when I decided to marry Matthew. Serves me right. Don't bother me. I want to get drunk. Why don't we dance? The young man suggested, eyeing her warily. Let's go. Kayla headed for the middle of the hall. Tell me, please. She was already a little drunk. How can you consider Matthew your friend? You're nothing like him. How many women did he have before me? How many while he was courting me, do you know? I don't know. The girl was moving to the beat of the music, waving her arms. I just realized today that he wasn't going to stop marrying me. He wasn't going to be faithful to me. And if I hadn't caught them in bed, they probably would have kept seeing each other. She laughed nervously. Kevin was afraid that a little more of this and the girl would become hysterical. Slow music started playing. Ask me to dance. Suddenly Kayla asked. The young man hugged her. She hung on him helplessly. Why? Why am I so unhappy? You will surely find your happiness, Kayla. Gently pressing her against him, Kevin soothed her. Do you think so? She looked at him with interest. Let's drink to love and true friendship. She freed herself from his embrace and headed towards the bar with a firm step. Young man, with difficulty pronouncing the words, the girl asked, pour me some more of your magic soothing drink. I'm not so sick at heart anymore. Yes, thank you. But don't drink it in one gulp. The bartender warned her. Otherwise you won't taste the cocktail. That's true. She shook her head. I don't remember what I drank, but it was good. Kayla? Kevin tried to stop her. Do you need a ride home? No way. I want to dance. You don't need to drink anymore. Who are you to tell me what to do? Maybe I'm the one who wants to get drunk tonight. Don't get in my way. Why aren't you drinking? One of us has to stay sober, especially when I'm driving. If you want to go home, I'll stay here. Then I'll ask this nice young man here. She tried to stroke the bartender's cheek. Call me a cab, won't you, buddy? I'm not leaving you. We came together, we'll leave together. Draining her glass, Kayla moved towards the dance floor again. She danced like she was trying to exhaust herself. How fun are the people here tonight? Jumping and waving her arms, she said, I feel very good. Thank you for bringing me here. You're a good man. Kevin followed her closely, not letting her go a step away from him. When she was tired, she almost fell at the feet of the dancers. The young man picked her up in his arms and carried her to the car. It was dawn when Kevin drove Kayla home. Oh, the girl moaned as she opened her eyes. The sun is so bright. What a headache. She wanted to get up, but leaned back against the pillow and closed her eyes, nausea rising in her throat. Good morning, beautiful. She heard a man's voice above her head. With difficulty, she opened her eyes again and squinted at the man. Oh, God! She whispered immediately, forgetting her headache, pulling the blanket up higher. You, me? What are you doing here? Where am I? Don't be nervous, please. You're in my house. Why did you bring me here? Looking at him suspiciously, the girl asked. You flatly refused to go home, so what was I supposed to do? Here, have a drink. He handed her a glass of water and a pill. It'll make you feel better. I hope you're not going to poison me. She said and took the pill. I don't remember anything. No wonder. Kevin laughed. You drained almost half the bar last night. No way, Kayla blushed. Actually, I don't drink. I figured as much. Smiling, he agreed. God, how embarrassing. The girl covered her face with her hands. Calm down, please. Nothing terrible happened. Just a little too much with cocktails. We danced, we talked, and then I realized that I had to get you home before you fell asleep on some sofa. And we did. Kayla faltered, searching for the right words. Between us? Don't worry about it. Kevin smiled again. Nothing happened between us. Why am I in your bed? Like a true gentleman, I gave you the bed, and I laid down on the couch. So I didn't take advantage of your helplessness. Your honor was safe tonight. You can rest assured. There's something else I forgot to tell you. Oh yes, your cell phone. He took the phone out of the nightstand and handed it to the girl. Sorry, I had to turn it off because it was ringing off the hook. Thank you so much for not abandoning me in my time of need. It's been a pleasure helping you. There's a towel and robe in the bathroom. Then come into the kitchen and I'll make breakfast. He stood for a moment, then walked out of the bedroom, leaving the girl alone. Kayla got out of bed. Her head was still foggy, but the pain was gone. She went to the bathroom, stood under the hot jets of water for a long time, as if trying to wash herself off the remnants of yesterday. Come to the table. Kevin invited the girl when she came out of the bathroom. It's a bachelor's breakfast, don't mind. Thanks. She sat down at the table. They ate in silence. Kayla thought intensely, picking at her plate of scrambled eggs. She ate a bite without tasting it. Her heart felt heavy. Your head is going to explode. Kevin couldn't take it anymore. Say something? I'm sorry. I'm not ready to talk right now. I have to sort out my own thoughts first. What should I do? The girl pondered. My running away is no reason not to talk to my parents. I should call them and let them know I'm okay. They must be freaking out. I'll call, and of course they'll defend Matthew and convince me to go back to him. My dad will say it's no big deal. He doesn't think Lara did anything wrong. I don't see how he can justify her when I caught Matthew in bed with her. This coming from my own father? Kayla? She heard Kevin's voice, and as if waking from a dream, she looked at him in surprise. I've been wondering about something for a long time. Maybe it will seem immodest to you, but I'll ask it. I'm trying to understand, did you agree to marry Matthew at the behest of your parents, or did you have feelings for him? You know, she said slowly. Yesterday morning I would have told you yes, I love Matthew, but today I'm ashamed to admit it. Today I'm even relieved that the wedding is off. Kevin kept his eyes on her. Apparently, I only thought I loved him. It took a shock like that to realize what was true and what was false. What are you going to do next? Go back home? Oh no, I can't go home. I'm sure your father and mother will beg you not to call off the wedding. It would mean pretending it never happened. Smile at Aunt Lara like nothing happened and marry Matthew because he's a wealthy man and I don't want to play by their rules anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. All I know is I'm not going home. You know, suddenly Kevin said, come with me. Where? Kayla was surprised. My grandmother gave me a house in the village. It's 300 kilometers from the city. I've already got a job, a good position, a decent salary. We'll put the house in order and live normally. Why, there's fresh air there, the beauty is all around. After all, you can live for a while until everything calms down and then decide what you'll do. But I can't go with you. Where will I live? The house is big enough for 2 people. We can't just live together. It's a village. Who am I going as? You and I are strangers. In the city, it's not wrong for a girl to live with a man and not be married to him, but it's different there. It's a bad idea. It won't work. Yeah, everybody's gonna be pointing fingers at me. If it's important to you, you can say you're my fiancé. We're saving up for the wedding. We can live in peace for a while, at least 6 months. And then what? What happens in 6 months? Then you and I will be married. Kevin smiled. I should have confessed a long time ago, because I love you. But it's impossible. The girl said, confused. Why not? I'll have 6 months to win you over. What if? No ifs. You will love me for sure. I will do everything so that one morning you wake up and realize that you can't live without me. Kayla looked at the young man with a long look. Good, she answered decisively. I'll go. Good, Kevin was happy. Then let's get ready, get some groceries, and go to the village, away from the problems of the city. What are we going to do there when we get there? First, we need to assess the situation, see what condition the house is in. It might need some repairs. Kayla, the young man said hesitantly, of course, it's none of my business, but don't you want to talk to your parents? Not right now. Kayla frowned. A little later. Until I'm ready to talk to them, I need to calm down. I feel like I shattered into many pieces. I need to try to regain at least some semblance of composure. Okay, Kevin agreed. You know the best thing to do, don't you? They went to the store and had a long discussion about what to buy. What if there is no light where we will cook? Kayla hesitated as Kevin put a bag of potatoes in the cart. Wouldn't it be better to get something that didn't need cooking? Can we make do with sandwiches? Even if there's no light, the young man reassured her. We have an oven. We can cook everything on it. An oven? The girl was amazed. Do you know how to light it? Of course, he assured her. It's no big deal. When the cart was filled with the goods Kevin thought they needed, they quickly paid at the cash register, loaded everything into the car, and set off. Are you sure you know where we're going? Kayla asked as they turned onto the dirt road, not sad anymore, but rather happy with the anticipation of something new in life. Yeah, we'll take a shortcut. Don't worry, I know the area pretty well. When was the last time you visited your grandmother? About 10 years ago. Don't you think the terrain might have changed, and no one's been on this road for a long time? Watch out! Suddenly the girl shouted, "Hare!" You almost ran him over. The car swerved sideways. Kevin tried to straighten it out, stepped on the gas, the engine roared and stalled. That's it. Congratulations. The young man looked out of the window and said sadly, We're stuck. Stuck how? We had to choose between saving the hare or going straight ahead. As soon as I turned sideways, I got stuck. Forest roads are unpredictable. The back tire's in a hole. He got out of the car and sat down beside it, looking behind the mud splashes. Can't we get out ourselves? I can push. The girl also got out. It's no use. We're sitting tight. We can wait. Kayla said cheerfully, for someone to come through and help us. We could stand here till the third coming. I was a fool to take a shortcut. If we were on asphalt now, we'd be here long ago. Quiet. Kayla suddenly cheered him up and grabbed his arm. Do you hear that car? At this time on the road really showed a car. The driver stopped a few meters from the travelers. What, guys? He asked cheerfully, leaning out of the window. Stuck. Yes, we hit a pothole. Can you help us? Kevin thanked God for sending them this man. Where are you guys going? Asked the stranger when Kevin's car was already standing on a dry road. We're going to my grandmother's village. Why didn't you recognize the turnoff to the village? It's the other way. What other way? Kevin shouted. You have to get on the main highway and drive back about 10 kilometers, and there you'll see a signpost. He walked around the car, assessing the situation. Then he hooked up a rope, started his car, and dragged them to the road. That was it. He looked at the work of his hands with satisfaction. Don't get stuck again. The man said a warm goodbye to Kevin and Kayla and drove off. Let's get out of here. The young man was frustrated because time had been wasted. After about half an hour, they finally reached the village and found the house. Yes, Kayla looked around the rooms. We're going to have to do a lot of cleaning around here. That's all right. The boy answered her cheerfully. We have plenty of time to clean up before dark. This place is going to need some repairs. Kayla noted. and not a small one. Yes, Kevin agreed. Almost all the furniture is in disrepair. The floors. Stomping his feet, he said. They need replacing too. The walls and roofs are still strong. I agree it's a lot of work, but I think we can manage. What do you think? Kayla happily poured herself into the work in silence. I'll go and talk to the men, the young man said. Maybe someone will help us out. All right, I'll take a look around. Kevin left. The girl was left alone. She looked around the rooms with interest, looking at the pictures on the walls. The owners. Suddenly she heard, "Hello, hello." Kayla stepped out onto the porch and saw a woman smiling good-naturedly. Are you the ones who are going to live here now? We are. Kayla watched her with interest. It's good to be young. My name is Clara. Kayla, nice to meet you. We have nature here. The air is clean. Just live and enjoy. You should renovate. The deceased hasn't done it in 5 years. That's why we came here, to fix the house. Why are you going to do it alone? It's not that kind of work. I'll talk to my friends. We'll get you all the wallpaper in the house in no time. Don't worry, we'll clean it up. Oh, thank you so much. Kayla was at a loss. That would be great. It's too early to say thank you. When are you going to tile it? This weekend. Oh, that's great. We'll come over and help decorate all the rooms. Don't look at me like I'm old. I can still do a lot of things, and my friends are just as perky as me. You look around. Clara told me to take care of business. I'll go get help. By evening, the house was cleaned. You guys must be hungry. Clara realized. I'm an old geezer. I'm out of my mind. Come to my place. I'll feed you. Thank you. Kayla tried to refuse. We have everything. No excuses are acceptable. The old woman waved at her. It's completely different here. Kayla said thoughtfully as they drove back to town, late at night, tired. Strangers offer their help, and it's easier, isn't it? Anyway, I like it. I'm glad you liked it. Kevin smiled. We'll finish the repairs, and then we can move in. The week went by quickly. On Saturday, Kevin and Kayla bought all the furniture. It was to be delivered to the village on Sunday. I was afraid we wouldn't make it. The young man confessed when the young people had dinner at their house in the evening. There was so much to do. I didn't expect such helpful people here either. Can you imagine? The neighbors have already offered their help in assembling the furniture, so you won't have to do it all alone. And Clara promised to clean the whole house after the renovation. Sounds like she's enjoying it. I'm glad we have such a friendly neighbor. Sunday all day, I didn't even have time to sit down to rest. Guys, Clara stopped by when the furniture was already assembled. All that was left was to set it up and mop the floors. Finish up here and come and have a bath. It's the nicest thing to do before the work week, to wash off all the dirt. Oh, right, Kevin caught on. I have my first day of work tomorrow. Tired, Kevin and Kayla fell asleep. Kevin had to go to work today. The first thing that came to her mind when she woke up was looking in the new refrigerator and pulling out a plate of eggs. Yawning and pulling himself up, the young man peered into the skillet. How delicious it smells! Where did the eggs come from? Clara obliged. Kayla smiled. Why are you up so early? I could have made eggs myself. Sit down. The girl put the contents of the frying pan on plates. I want to go to the city. Why? Kevin looked at her questioningly. I've decided to stop hiding. I need to talk to my parents. Maybe now they'll hear me. I'm under no illusions, though. Dad's probably still mad. You're right. We'll have to talk sooner or later. He took the car keys out of his jacket. Here, it'll be quicker. Oh, And one more thing. He took out some money and put it on the table. Take it. It'll come in handy. Kevin, the girl looked at him gratefully. Thank you so much for your support. I will definitely come back. Kayla saw the doubt in Kevin's eyes, all the way she thought about what she would tell her parents, but the conversation didn't go the way she imagined. Kayla, her father shouted when she appeared on the doorstep. Where have you been all this time? No call, no message. My mother and I almost went crazy. My daughter, her mother wailed, hugging her. At least Nora called and said you were all right. We didn't know what to think. I needed to be alone. Too much had happened lately. The girl went to her room and started packing. Where are you going? Dad was surprised. I'm going to move out of your house. I am an adult. It's time to start living on my own. And where are you going to live? Dad grinned. Most importantly, on what? Don't worry, Dad. I'll work. I'm going to the country. I don't want to stay here anymore. I didn't know Matthew had decided to trade city life for country life. What's Matthew got to do with it? Kayla asked, still packing. It's over with him. I'm going with Kevin. He's got a house in the village, and we've been renovating it this week. Kevin's already got a job, and I'll find something to do. We'll be all right. Kayla, Mother cried out in horror. Listen to yourself. How can you seriously say such a thing? Are you going to live in the country, in this stable, surrounded by marginalized people? And this Kevin, how could he let you do repairs? Yes, he's a real exploiter. You're crazy. Who did you trade Matthew for? With him, you could have had a home. You wouldn't have had to work, and in a year you'd be giving us grandchildren. And now what? What are you going to become in a year in the country? My God, this is my daughter talking. Mom, I can do my own thing in the country, believe me. How can you think of self-development there? Do you think you'll be happier with Kevin? With that bastard? He's no match for Matthew. Matthew is such a subtle, intelligent boy. Father, why don't you say something? Evelyn turned to her husband in despair. Oh, yes, Kayla nodded. Matthew may be smart, but it's hard to argue with that. I just don't want to have to guess every time he walks out the door. Did he go to work or did he go to bed with another rich, great-aged lady like my Aunt Lara? You're wrong, daughter. Benjamin interjected. Matthew loves you. Yeah, he made a mistake, but that's okay. You don't know how much he regrets it. We all make mistakes sometimes. Don't be so hot. Learn to forgive. Come on, stop fooling around. We've played enough. You've shown your independence. We realize the little girl has grown up, but you have to stop. Come home. That's enough. You've had enough. The father tried to take the suitcases from his daughter, but she gently pulled him away. You still don't get it. I'm not joking or playing around. I'm serious about starting a new life. I'm tired of fitting in, of playing the good girl. Well, think about it. Why do you want to do all this? You have a home here. We're close by. The girl saw her father struggling to stay calm. What awaits you in the village? Kevin? Who the hell is he and where did he come from? You know him not well enough. Leave him alone. In a week he won't even remember you. And Matthew? You know each other perfectly well. You're hurt now, we understand, but it'll pass. You just give Matthew a chance to make it right. Do you hear me? Why don't you say anything? Dad, I can hear you perfectly well, and I know what you're going to say next. You think you're scaring me with the difficulties? What makes you think Kevin is exploiting me? Why on earth would you advise me to leave him? Because you think he's bad. Oh, right, because you have Matthew. He's an example of a fine family man who can provide a woman with anything her heart desires. I even know what's in store for me. I'll live at home, surrounded by beautiful furniture, all my wishes fulfilled at the click of a button. I'll give you grandchildren, a beautiful future. Only me and my children need Matthew no more than expensive furnishings. We'll give a certain status to a young, successful businessman. He will come when he wants, leave when he wants, and in between work and home, seek comfort in the arms of other women. What's next? Is this the life you parents have in store for your daughter? Kayla, the mother cried, we only care about you. Matthew is already like a son to us. We love him. And you're used to luxury and comfort. How can you live long in the country? Don't you think I know what you're worried about? Kayla shifted her gaze tiredly from her father to her mother. You hope to keep your business intact. You don't care how Matthew and I get along. You think you have the right to tell me who to live with, how to live my life, because you're going to provide us with money. And you remember to remind me of that every day, but I don't need it. Why? What do you need? What is there in this stinking hole but not in our house? What else do you need? My father didn't hold back anymore. I already have everything I need, a house, girlfriends I can just have tea with and have a heart-to-heart talk with. They don't care about my status or the thickness of my parents' wallet. Most importantly, I have a man I love who cares, who listens to me, not swatting me away like an annoying fly, and he loves me simply because I am me, not because my parents have money. Kayla, my mother splashed her hands. Are you crazy? That Kevin was bewitching you. Wait till you remember what I said when he forbids you to talk to your parents. Leave him, for God's sake. Listen to us. We've seen a lot of things in life, and you're inexperienced. You're easily fooled. Mom, do you realize that I'm really happy now? Daughter, father coughed. Because of you, our whole business is falling apart. Think of your mother and me. We've done so much for you. We can't lose everything because of your resentment. You have to go back to Matthew, or Lara will pull the money from the firm, and we'll deal with it. I was counting on your husband's father for support. I feel sorry for you, honestly. The girl looked sadly at her parents. I don't know when you became like this. Dad, you loved Mom, didn't you? You didn't even want to work with Aunt Lara before. And now what? Why is working with her and your own comfort more important to you than my happiness? She was quiet for a moment. I don't want to fight with you, but I'm not leaving Kevin. Let's end our useless argument here. I guess we're not speaking the same language yet. She was determined to leave. Kayla, don't go. Please stay. Her mother begged her. Okay, you'll go back to Kevin, but later. Stay at home. We'll think it over, talk it over, take our time. Don't do anything stupid. Please, sweetheart. Mom. Kayla stopped, hugged her. I love you, but I'm not staying. I hope someday you will understand me and forgive me. The girl got into the car, waved goodbye to her mother, glanced at the house. Her father's figure loomed in the window. Is she gone? Benjamin asked. Gone, hard, sighed Evelyn. What are we going to do now? The man went into his office, sat down at his desk, propped his head up with his hand, and said gloomily into space, Why did I get involved with Lara? I wouldn't owe anyone anything now. A heavy memory was weighing on him. Benjamin had berated himself more than once for agreeing to do business with his sister. At the time, it seemed to him, he had made the only right decision. Slowly we're building up sales. Benjamin paced the office. Funds are tight. You could take out a loan. The wife stammered. I'm all over these loans. The man sat down abruptly in his chair. Profit is only enough to cover debt obligations, and there is not enough left for development. But others also take loans for development. And the bank refused us this time because we already have a lot of loans. We need an investor. Then we could not only quickly close all the loans, but also increase turnover. The niche is profitable. Household appliances will always be in demand. So none of your fellow entrepreneurs will give you money. Maybe they would, but they would have to share the company's shares, and I wouldn't like that very much. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to mess with strangers. While Benjamin and Evelyn were discussing the problems of the family business, the doorbell rang. I'll get it. A woman came up. Lara? Benjamin heard his wife's surprised voice. What a surprise! What brings you here? And why alone? Where's your husband? Hello, brother. The young woman threw herself at the man's neck. Am I glad to see you? There you go, sister. He hugged her. Tell me how you are. I came to visit you. Husband? He's dead. I'm free again. Dead how? Evelyn gasped. Why? Why didn't you call? We would have come to support you. I beg you. The guest wrinkled her nose. Died of old age, it's already clear. Don't pretend you didn't know who I married. We were surprised at your choice, of course. He was a good husband to you and seemed to love you sincerely. And you must have loved him too. Otherwise, why did you marry him? What kind of love are you talking about, Evelyn? My husband was twice my age. His only virtue was that he was rich. And yet I shouldn't have told you. The lady of the house lamented. We are not strangers to him. We'd like to see him off to his final resting place too. There was someone to see him off without you. Lara waved her hand carelessly. So don't worry. The main thing is that I'm fabulously rich now. All movable and immovable property has gone to me. Lately, as I felt, I began to take interest in the affairs of the company, the owner of which was my husband. So I can handle it. I have reliable people. You must be tired from the road. Evelyn caught on. Come on, I'll show you to your room. We'll meet in the kitchen in half an hour. The woman quickly assembled a festive table for her sister's arrival. Benjamin opened a bottle of wine. So, tell me, brother, how are you doing? How's business? Sitting down at the table and eating, Lara asked. Not bad, but I wish it were better. Benjamin frowned. What's holding you back? Lack of money. The bank refused to give me a loan, and I wanted to buy more goods to cover my debts. Trade is going well, but there's very little money left for development. So they're just stagnating. Listen, brother. Lara clapped him on the shoulder. I'm ready to invest in your firm. You? Benjamin was surprised. Why, I have the money, so what will they be idle? We'll make a family business out of it, you know. What do you say, brother? I gotta think about it. Think. I'm in no hurry. But I won't wait long. The money has to work. Benjamin thought all night and called his sister in the morning. Lara, I agree. Good. She was happy. I'll tell my lawyers to take care of the contract, and we'll meet to discuss the terms. A week later, Benjamin sat in the negotiating room and scrutinized the contract. Lara, I don't get it, do I? The man reread the terms of the deal over and over again. Now you own the majority of the firm? Why are you scared? The woman laughed. We are our own people. The fact that I have the majority of the business in my hands is logical. I have invested my money. I've paid off all your loans, and then, it's only on paper, I have a higher percentage, but you are still in charge here. I'm not even gonna get involved in running the firm. It's yours. You should have known, Benjamin thought, that I was getting into bondage, but I gave in to persuasion and promises, and now I'm paying for my cowardice, and what could I do? At the time, working with Lara was too tempting to calculate the risks, and I didn't want to think that the whole thing would backfire on me. I still had the business, I had plenty of work, and I had a family to feed. I was waiting for my daughter to grow up to strengthen my position. And this is how it turned out. Benjamin stood up, went to the bar, poured cognac into a glass and drank it. What to do? How to bring back the rebellious daughter? Meanwhile, Kayla bought groceries, dishes, and all the little things she lacked in the household and got into the car. Suddenly, the phone rang. Kayla, hello. She heard the cheerful voice of her friend. How are you? You're not in touch at all. You're in your village, and you don't show your face. Nora, it's so good to hear from you. I'm just in town, but I'm on my way back to the village. Where are you? I want to see you. Is there a coffee shop nearby? Why don't we sit and talk for a while? Okay, I'll wait for you. Half an hour later, the friends were already sitting in the nearest cafe. I can't get used to Kevin, Kayla admitted. He's nothing like Matthew. What do you mean different? Nora wondered. He does all the housework with ease. I'm used to having helpers around the house, and Kevin can do everything himself. You know, he can even cook better than me. He can't be bothered to clear the table, do the dishes. So it's good that you don't like it. I don't get it. Is he a homebody who doesn't socialize? On the contrary, he's new at his job and his coworkers already like him. Does he offend you? No way. Kayla made big eyes. He is ready to carry me in his arms, fulfills all my wishes. Friend, you are the happiest woman. Nora exclaimed, I envy you. Thank God you got rid of that pompous, self-righteous peacock, your Matthew. What a life you'd have had with him. Nothing but tears. I suppose you're right. She glanced furtively at her watch. Can't wait to get back to Kevin. She asked with a smile, I'll admit it, honestly. Yeah. Kayla blushed. Go. I'm happy for you. Say hi to Kevin. I'll be sure to come visit. The friends hugged each other warmly, said goodbye, and Kayla left. The days flew by. Kayla, one night after dinner, Kevin suggested, why don't we go for a walk by the river? I'd love to. The girl loved their evening walks. How nice is it here? She said dreamily, looking at the thick fog that was rising from the river. Kevin put his arm around Kayla and smiled. Maybe your parents had gotten better since last time? He asked hopefully. I wouldn't count on it. Kayla answered. Besides, the situation with Matthew hasn't changed. My aunt isn't interested in him anymore, but she is interested in working with his father, and his father will only agree to work with her if Matthew and I get married or if he gets 15% of the company. There's no way his father's gonna go for that. It's a vicious circle. My parents are still mad at me. Kayla, I know we're not at a fancy restaurant or even a restaurant. Anyway, whatever. But I wanted to ask you something. About what? She smiled. Will you marry me? He asked, holding out a ring box to the girl. Kevin. The girl looked at him with tear-stained eyes. Of course, I would love to be your wife. Even without your parents' consent? Even without my parents' consent. I love you very much. I love you too. Kevin put his arms around her and kissed her hard. One day Kayla saw a strange car in the window that stopped in front of their house. Who was it? The girl wondered. The car is unfamiliar. Kevin did not warn her that we would have guests. To her horror, Matthew got out of the car. He looked around the house condescendingly and headed for the gate. Why did you come here? Kayla stepped out onto the porch and folded her arms across her chest, signaling that this guest was not welcome. How'd you find us? Jesus, Kayla! What's with the manners? You've only lived here for a short time, and you've forgotten how to behave? Guests should be made welcome. As far as I know, that's how it's done in the village. Give me a hug. At least pretend you're happy to see me. You're not welcome, and it's better if you leave now. I beg you, don't pretend that you're not glad to see me. Let me come into the house. We're not going to talk in the street. I don't want the neighbors to witness our conversation. I don't have time to receive uninvited guests. Tell me what you want here and leave. Don't give yourself any illusions. No one was expecting you here. I don't recognize my fiancé. I'm not your fiancé. Fie, Kayla. Country life is not good for you. Quite the opposite. I've learned to see through liars and traitors, and this is one of them, and I've lost the rose-colored glasses you can't put back on my eyes. Oh, come on, swaggered the young man, easily pushing her aside and walking into the house. Stop resenting what was, what is past. We are not strangers. Parents are friends. We are almost relatives. We have a lot in common, and if it were not for an unfortunate oversight, long ago would have become husband and wife, and all would be happy. And you have nothing here. He looked around. It's cozy. I didn't expect it. Although the house is a bit small, of course. Do you really want to live like this? Have you satisfied your curiosity? Now get out. You've become so rude, and I came for you. Honestly, I thought you'd come running to me first. I was wrong. I didn't realize that my gentle, calm, modest bride has a temper. Did you show it? I understood and realized everything and even came to apologize. Tell me you forgive me. Well, come to me. I missed you. He tried to hug her and kissed her. Kayla pushed him away. I see you still don't get it. Kayla looked contemptuously at her ex-fiancé. Did you really drive all the way out here and expect me to turn to you for a hug? How presumptuous are you, you scoundrel? I have too much self-respect to forgive treason. I really loved you. How blind was I? I believed that Dad would do the right thing, but no one even mentioned love. Don't you have any dignity at all if you agreed to marry a girl you don't love? Don't you care who you marry? Why do you let your father decide who you marry? Who am I talking to? She grinned sadly. All you care about is profit. If necessary, you'll marry a bald devil to please your father for fear of losing money. Honey, you're out of your mind. Matthew tried to change her mind. Of course I love you now. Otherwise, I would never have agreed to this marriage. You're wrong. Don't accuse me of all the deadly sins. You make me sound like a monster. Yes, I have faults. I'm ready to admit it. But I will improve. Just come with me. Believe me, I really loved you. Remember how good we were together? Loved you and cheated on your wedding day. What kind of love is that? You're wasting your time trying to convince me to come back. At least have some dignity. Honey, we've played enough games. Yes, I was wrong, but you've already punished me, gotten back at me with Kevin. He smirked. I'm not gonna make a jealous scene. Stop pouting. You get ugly when you're angry. I love you. He tried to kiss her again. Kayla pushed Matthew away and slapped him hard. At that moment, the door opened and Kevin walked in. What's going on in here? I see we have company. Kevin furrowed his eyebrows, eyeing his buddy warily. You're just in time. The girl was pleased. I've been telling Matthew that you proposed to me, and we're getting married in a couple of days, and we don't have time for guests. What wedding? What about us? Stunned Matthew. There is no we. Get out. Kayla cut him off. How many times do I have to tell you? I want to forget everything. You have no idea how hard it was for me to erase the image of you and Lara in my parents' bedroom. But I did it. You can't just send me away like that. It's our wedding. No one's canceling anything. You have to come home. Your parents are waiting for you. It's not my problem. Kayla said firmly, my home is here. I'm not marrying you anyway, and I don't care about your business. You can tell everyone concerned. I will not allow myself to be made a pawn so that you betting on me can win a lucrative game and my parents will someday realize that love is more precious than anything else in the world. You've ruined everything, yelled Matthew in despair. Running around with your love, who needs it? Do you really like living here? Slaving from dawn to dusk and from paycheck to paycheck. What can it get you, Kevin? I can give you everything. What does he have that I don't? He knows how to be faithful. Kayla answered calmly, I'm not coming back to you. You're going to wish you'd come with me. Matthew looked angrily first at Kayla, then at Kevin. A year from now, you'll be sick of this life, and you'll want to come back, but it'll be too late, and then I'll watch you beg and plead to be taken back. I'm sorry for you, Matthew, the girl said sympathetically. The young man turned around, kicked his foot in the door, went outside, got into his car, and a minute later, only the dust from the wheels of the car reminded him of the unpleasant meeting. I'm sorry you had to listen to the nonsense Matthew was talking. Kayla walked over and gave Kevin a hug. I have a proposition. What is it? Kevin hesitated and said, Let's get ready for the wedding. Kayla laughed merrily, clung to him even tighter. I'm the luckiest woman in the world. Kevin leaned down to place a long, loving kiss on her lips.
Subscribe and click the bell. Camille ran like a madwoman through the park, realizing that she was catastrophically late for work. And it had to happen that very night the batteries in her watch stopped and the alarm clock didn't wake her up on time. Why should she be surprised? She had been living in total poverty for a long time, unable to afford proper food. And she'd forgotten about clothes when she bought herself normal clothes. Not from, oh shit. And the weather, as luck would have it, it was raining. God forbid my feet get wet and my leather shoes fall apart. And as it happens, she couldn't sleep last night. What can I say? She hasn't eaten properly in a long time. And last night finished with a glass of kefir and the last couple of bagels for the evening for what you say her waist is thin. Camille tried to cheer herself up, but it just didn't seem to work. And what good could it do? If you're on potatoes, cabbage, lettuce. But thank God, at work in a boarding house for the elderly, she could eat more or less normal food. What normal food? What do they feed our old people? Water. A couple of cereals or vermicelli or a handful. Thanks for that. I did have a snack. Camille went to bed with a meager supper last night, but sleep wouldn't come on an almost empty stomach. At work she had a breakfast of porridge, but she missed lunch because of an old lady. And the coworkers were friends. They took everything to the pigsty and left her nothing. Come on, they could have at least left a bowl of soup. Camille slammed the dining room door in indignation, glaring angrily at her coworkers. Camille, I'm sorry, the handout told her. I thought you'd eaten, but I didn't see you here, did you? But the girl didn't want to hear anything. What's the point? She was still hungry. True, the handout gave her a small bag. There's some kefir, some cookies. At least it's more of a relief from hunger. And still no paycheck. And the money hasn't been paid yet. As it happens, everyone probably got their paychecks. But I got nothing, as usual. What money is there? Cat's tears. At least I'm thankful I have a subsidy. Camille was orphaned at 14 when her mother and father died in a factory. What can I say? In their country, few people cared about worker safety. It was a similar situation here. It happened everywhere, especially if the boss grew up in the USSR. And there, the term labor safety for them is just an inscription in the report. My mother and father worked on a collective farm for grain storage, and one day they were just swamped. 10 tons of wheat crushed by the grain. Not just her parents. There were more victims, but only one Camille, out of all those living in the labor village, remained around orphan. No, she was taken in by a distant relative. one of her father's cousins. But what kind of life was that? Survival. The woman didn't want to clothe and feed her, saying that you were better than others. No, she had some leftover clothes from the table after her in-laws, but was there any money in the house? What was the apartment in the center of the city, which the woman rented out and the proceeds simply put in her pocket? But Camille held on as best she could. She realized that just a little bit more, and it will be possible to get a passport, and they're all ready, and sell the apartment. I'll give you a room here. The woman insisted more and more. Don't sell it. What will I do? And where will I go when I get my passport? You'll throw me out on the street under the fence first. But she simply didn't say it out loud, and only shook her head stubbornly. For this, the old woman repeatedly beat her with a stick or a wet towel. I don't know what to say. It was not uncommon to hit a teenager with a poker. Nothing. Let me just get out of here. Wiping her tears, the girl said to herself under her breath. I wish with every fiber of my being that you'd grow up and move to the city. What can I say? Big city means big opportunities. She was wrong. To have all those opportunities, you had to have at least good friends in the right circles. Camille didn't have any. And where would they come from if you grew up in a labor camp on handouts from your aunt, and your parents could not give a proper education? When the girl stammered about going to university, she thought that the world had come to an end. Old Emily yelled so much that almost half of the village went to the street. Ever since then, Camille has realized one thing. She could only count on herself, no one else. But this did not kill her desire to help others. Now, rushing to work and staggering in the wind in a half-starved faint, she glanced at the old man sitting on the bench. It was a man she had noticed, and here a few days ago, the old man was sitting on a bench, leaning on a stick and staring at nothing. At first she thought it was just another dog person, but no, it wasn't. She knew them all by sight, as she always went to work through the park, where residents from neighboring houses walked their pets. This one did, and there wasn't a dog in sight. Strange, she thought, and went on her way. Why should she care about another poor old man? Maybe he can't sleep with these feelings of money. That's why he gets up at 5 o'clock and walks around the room, or goes for a walk in the park. That's the best case scenario. I mean, the kids could easily kick the annoying parent out of the house. And now he's got nowhere to go. Come on, there's always somewhere else to go. The police, for example, there's always a solution for such a stubborn child. She believed in the police. She remembered the deaths of her parents, how the investigator tried to establish the truth. But the truth is always hidden in the place where the big money begins. That grain was unaccounted for. And so the death of the parents was simply written off on their own carelessness, but not on the industrial trauma. The investigator then spread his hands, trying to explain the situation to Camille. What is there to explain? The girl herself saw how the chairman and the owner of the storehouse lived, and he was not favorable to the death of her parents. But money decides everything. Old people, whatever they were, bored, no matter how much they taught. But they were parents. The girl's heart clenched involuntarily in her chest, and she stopped for a moment at the underpass. Memories of her family and parents always brought tears to her eyes. But this minute she saw with her own eyes how helpless old people could be. She involuntarily took a few deep breaths and was about to walk away when a young boy stopped beside her. A young guy stopped. Girl, are you feeling ill? Maybe you need help. Maybe call an ambulance. Or something else. So you tell me. The voice was very young. It sounded like a child. But when Camille turned her head toward the speaker, she was struck by the difference in appearance and voice. He was a handsome young man, the kind of man they say has a slim shoulders. He stood and looked at her intently. Yes, such not often fit her expensive coat jeans, probably some foreign firm. Black lacquered shoes that shone like something. Did you come by car? What a weather. Not a drop of dirt on his soft shoes. No, I'm fine. Thanks. I'm not fine. You're all beat up, and your breathlessness is not good. That, take my word for it. My grandfather used to have these attacks. It's people like you who kick old people out of their warm homes, often starve them or make them go begging. Like their Sophia begging in the street, or like that old man on the bench this morning for whom knows what kind of need he's sitting on, she thought. Yes, I know. But never mind. You're not going to care about me with those shoes. The girl took another deep breath and shook her knees, proudly raising her head higher. She walked on. No need to give her superiors a reason to reprimand her for being late. She had already paid for her carelessness once. It won't happen again. Camille once stopped and helped an old lady cross the street. But I'll be late again. I'll just fire you, that's all. There's always someone else to take your place. And right now, I'm just gonna take away your bonus. Do you understand me? Camille, I was only 10 minutes late, but half of her monthly salary went into the superintendent's pocket. What did she go through? No one knew. And who could she complain to? It was summer, and it was possible to survive well on apples that grew on the territory of the kindergarten. And there were sweet grapes growing there. But it would have been winter. Then this incident taught her a lot, and certainly to the fact that it is better not to lend a helping hand than to be so shamefully humiliated and destitute in everything. No, not an old man, not a child, can't stop me. And she ran hard to work, as she probably wouldn't run to a fire. And this day, she would not lie on the couch hungry, choking on her tears and thinking how fate had deprived her of everything. The day flew by in a hectic pace, just like every day before that ducks and 24 hours of walking with old people and feeding them from a spoon. But for some reason, Camille could not get that old man on the bench in the park near her house out of her mind. She did not understand what was the reason for such a selectivity of her memory. An ordinary old man, of whom there are many in the country, who often sit like that in the park or in palaces and think about their own things. No, there was something about him that attracted attention. Not a sadness, not an event in his eyes, a thought of the eternal, or maybe regret for the mundane. Okay, if anything, I'll leave the house early next time and ask him how he's doing. Maybe he does need help, 'cause I've become so callous and cruel. Like our superintendent has become a snake, a particularly poisonous snake. Camille smiled and helped a nice old lady outside. She had been friends with Evelyn for a long time. But friendship how? Camille looked after her, helped her shower, change her clothes, go for walks, and the old French teacher gave her life and language lessons. Camille, you're a little sad today. Did something happen in your life? Yes? How can I put it? Evelyn, it's nothing. But you know, I noticed an old man in the park near my house on a bench, but he wasn't homeless. He's dressed clean. Inexpensive, but neat. But you know, he sits, puts his head on a shelf and stares at nothing. What's so remarkable about that? We old people can often sit like that and stare at nothing. And there's nothing we can do about it. No, I understand that. I mean, you know, the look in his eyes. I honestly can't describe it. I thought I'd go over and ask him what happened to him. Maybe I could help. It would be the right thing to do. Maybe his kids kicked him out of the house and the old man's in the streets. Or maybe he can't remember where he lives or he lost his wife. Is that how I lost my husband? It seems like you realize with your head that he's gone. But sometimes I feel so sad that I can't. Evelyn, how about breakfast today? Camille changed the subject so as not to upset the kind old lady. Evelyn hadn't been with them long. Only 6 months ago. All because of her wayward son. He owed the bank money and couldn't pay it back in time. So the bank took the apartment. And the sweet old lady went into a nursing home. What happened to Evelyn's son? You never said. But Camille realized that the money he had received must not have done him any good, since his mother was silent about his fate. You know, Camille, it was relatively tasty. Why should I complain? I realize it's not home-cooked food. And I'm not healthy enough to cook it myself. And there's nothing to cook with. You know that when the bank took my apartment, I even rode around in basements and attics, eating whatever I could get my hands on. I even stood in the street with my hand out, begging for alms in French. Imagine that picture. It's a lot to see and hear in this life, especially when you talk to old people like that every day. Every one of them came here through no fault of their own. Some of them just drank their way out of the apartment, like their new tenant, an associate professor. Others have fallen into the clutches of crooks, like Evelyn's roommate, Nancy. Not such an old woman. What can I say? Everyone's brought here by chance, not by choice. Not Evelyn. I'm sorry. How's your son? Camille. You know, I don't know where he is or what's wrong with him. And to tell you the truth, I don't want to know. And you don't have to ask me. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I just must have done something stupid. It's all right, my girl. It's all right. It's true. You're not the only one who asks me that question. So I just got used to it. From that moment on, Camille never asked her charges personal questions. The shift passed quietly, and the girl was glad that at least this shift passed without adventures. She was walking home through the park, and she went through the park on purpose, through the bench where she had noticed that strange old man. But what she saw shocked her. No, he was sitting on the bench as before, but this minute tears were dripping from his eyes. Bitter, senile tears that quietly rolled down his wrinkles and cheeks and dripped onto his typist and hands. Camille could not stand it, and taking an old knapsack off his shoulder, approached him. Good morning. Is something wrong? I can help you. The old man turned his head at the young voice and looked at the girl with unseeing eyes. Camille quietly oohed and nodded and covered her mouth with her hand, so as not to further frighten either the people around or the old man himself. The man's eyes were covered like a shroud. Blindness could be total, Camille thought, and sat down on the bench next to him. She did not know how to behave. After all, the old man was nobody to her, and for whatever reason he was crying. Maybe it was just a rush of feelings, or maybe there's another reason, and he doesn't want to share it with her. Excuse me, dear girl, I can hear that you're young. You don't have to pay attention to an old man. My eyes are not so blind. I can see your outline, but they're not sharp enough for me to see your pretty face. And I'm sure it is. And Camille smiled involuntarily. She was so pleased to hear those words. It was like a balm to her soul, even if it was said by an old man rather than a young man. She looked at him attentively, and without thinking, she took his hand and stroked it, not thinking how people passing by would look at it. I can help you with something. You know, I work in a home for the elderly. I can help you if you need it. Thank you, sweet girl. What's your name? Camille. Like Camille in Lewis Carroll's Wonderland. Mine's Stephen. Just Stephen, if you like, so no offense. Lovely creature. But your parents certainly had a certain sense of humor. At least they loved the tale. I don't think my parents even read it just in the years I was born. Fashionable was the given name. And I read the book, and really liked the heroine. I don't want to go into the world of the Cheshire Cat and the Wild Hatter. A smile flashed across the old man's face, and it did not escape the eyes of Camille, who was always sensitive to the moods of old men. His change of mood is one thing that makes me glad that I have distracted you from sad thoughts, and here you are smiling again. You know, I've noticed you for a long time. I often walk to work through the park, and I've always had no time to come over and ask you how you're doing. And then I see you crying. So am I. And you felt sorry for the old man. The girl shook her lips and realized she'd said something stupid. She shouldn't have said that, but just thought for a minute how her words would be perceived by other people, especially those to whom they were addressed. I apologize if my words offended you. Life had taught Camille to never look at how a person was dressed, and everything in her life had been changed by one incident, probably 3 years ago, when she'd just gotten a job at a nursing home. An old man had come in. How did he get in? He was brought in by ambulance from the local hospital. He was dressed in a hospital suit, pajamas. He didn't have much on him. One bag of personal endeavors. all unshaven and overgrown. Camille was just starting to work then, and on many things, or rather, on many of the inhabitants of the boarding house. She looked with a certain only and squeamishness, but the nurse Sophia had opened her eyes to many things. Don't look so squeamish, girl. Even an ordinary homeless man can hide under the guise of a general. They bring in this old man, and he's not an old man at all, but a millionaire. What's he doing here? It goes on. You're not Belly or the Canaries, but Camille. You were a fool, and you'll always be a fool. How did I get my apartment from the general? No less. Indeed, the very story that happened to Smith was like a kind of Cinderella fairy tale. But the fairy tale heroine was a simple nurse. They just brought in a man suffering from memory loss, and he seems like a nice guy. He's got his papers on him, and he's not dressed like a bum, and it looks like you're holin'. But he doesn't remember anything. Where is he from, and who is he? Why is he here? Turns out he was just drunk. The man, being a guest at a friend's house, fell and hit his head. The friend thought he had already given his soul to God, but he hadn't. It was just a simple blackout. And then what happened? Camille asked as Smith told her story. Then what happened? Nothing. A friend drove him to another town and dumped him. He woke up and didn't remember a thing. But the brave policeman sent him back to us, and he was already old. And the brain is a tricky thing. His memory came back to him, and it turned out that he was not just an old man, but a police general. Oh, come on. Wasn't anyone looking for him? He probably has a wife and kids, and no one filed a report. But it's not that there was no one. He still has a wife and kids, but apparently no one thought to look for him in another area. And here he is. And when I remembered everything, you gave me an apartment. For thinking about him and spoon-feeding him, I gave him shots and compressors. When he had a headache, poor guy. That's it. So don't look at people with a glance. Now she pressed her lips together and apologized to the old man again. Oh, don't be in pain, young lady. I realize that a crying old man is like a crying baby. You want to hug him, stroke his head, like you're putting my hand on him involuntarily. You want to comfort him. It's right, it's human. I'll even say more God's orthodoxy. The historian looked carefully at the girl. He felt the warmth of her hands, saw the outlines of her face, but could not see her features. His eyesight was no longer good, but inwardly he realized that Camille was pure of heart, although life had used her mercilessly. But the old man himself could not say the same about himself and his life. I guess the time has come when one draws the line and says this was in my life, and this I missed through my own fault. Then can I buy you ice cream? You know, it's been so long since I've sat in a park and had ice cream. Camille didn't know how she said that, but she really did have a craving for ice cream. Just sitting on a bench, eating a sweet treat, talking to a stranger about nothing. Do you really want that? My young ladies, the old man's face brightened up, and an inner light began to shine through the shroud of blindness in his eyes. Well, I'll be honest, it's not a hot summer outside, but I think you and I both deserve this sweet treat. You do? Yeah, I can't believe, Camille. I'm craving chocolate ice cream on a stick. There was a note of happiness and joy in the old man's voice, and Camille promptly jumped up and ran to the ice cream parlor, which stood not far from the park entrance. She opened her wallet and pulled out the last bill from there. Yeah, careless. Yes, Camille. Spending the last of your money on ice cream. Fuck that. This is the last time we live, and I don't have much joy in my life. Maybe it really is that old guy. She handed a bill to the clerk and said 2 ice creams. Please, 1 white, 1 chocolate. Here you go. Have a good appetite. Camille took the 2 ice creams and returned to the bench. She held out the chocolate ice cream to the old man, placing it carefully in his hand. Thank you, my dear. How much do I owe you? Nothing. You keep me company, and I give you ice cream. Then let me make you an offer in return. Next time you're free, we'll meet here in the park, and I'll buy you a scoop of ice cream and coffee. Trust me, it's quite tasty. I know, I tried it once. It's really good. Okay, I'll take it. She did try it once in a cafe, but it was so long ago, probably in her past life, when Alex asked her out and gave her Camille. True, that relationship had not progressed any further. Having found out that she was an orphan, that she worked for pennies in a boarding house for the elderly, he simply left her. I mean, what can a promising student have? And she's just a nurse. Alex, why did you leave me? One day, she met him in town and asked him about it. Why would I want such a penniless orderly? Alex stood there all cocky, fashionably dressed with a cigarette in his hand, and looked up at her. There's really no reason to. Camille walked and berated herself for asking Alex about it. But why? You knew perfectly well the answer to the question. And did you want to hear it? No, especially not in front of witnesses. That was the most frustrating part. After all, when Alex answered, there were several guys and girls standing next to her, and all were witnesses of her shame. Since then, a girl for publicity to put a question to which she knew the answer perfectly well. But now was not the situation, and she could not ignore the old man's offer. Then, my dear Camille of Wonderland, tell me, if you would be so kind, when is your day off? Tonight I'm off after a 24-hour nap, and then I have to work tomorrow. Then we'll have Thursday off. We can treat ourselves on Thursday. Thank you, Camille. See you Thursday then. When can I expect you at this very spot? And the old man tapped the ground with his stick. I'll be on my way home from work, so I can keep you company without going home. It will be convenient for you at 10 o'clock. It's always convenient for us old folks, especially if that's what the lovely young lady wants. Until Thursday then, 10 o'clock. And standing up, he theatrically raised his hat and bowed his head and walked quietly down the alley. I nod my wand at 100, so he's not so blind he can see the road. And Camille exhaled. What's the last of the money spent? The ice cream is eaten, and now all that's left is to live to see the paycheck. And it's good that the paycheck is in 3 days. And at home there's still cereal and tea and butter, so we can live. It's all right. Camille had come out of such hungry days. She smiled to herself and went home. At home, she still had to prepare a simple lunch and dinner, dividing a cup of grits and a little butter for 2 meals. But the figure like a model, no extra pounds. Camille ate and turned on the TV. It was the only thing of value in her apartment. A Sony TV that she had bought from a neighbor for a small sum of money. The girl often sat in the evenings and watched news and soap opera while talking to it. Who else could she talk to? She couldn't even get a cat, because it had to be fed. And even herself often didn't have enough money for proper food. Cabbage, sometimes beets and potatoes, and with her paycheck she could buy herself a stick of sausage. A woman took pity on her and sometimes invited her to her dacha for kebabs, and Camille helped her dig the garden and plant potatoes. No, she did not complain about the old nurse. She helped her with food from her garden. She took pity and gave her really good advice. Even twice she covered for her superiors. And you can feed her with bread and water. Do not tell him that sorry, Barsik or Merzik. There's no money. Go catch mice. So we had to talk to the TV. But this old man Camille didn't even ask who he was or what his name was. Oh, come on. Thursday's coming up. We'll have something to talk about later. In the meantime, we should get some sleep. I have to go back to work tomorrow. Like it or not, she was forced to work 24/7 by necessity. I don't know what to say. She's got to make a living. Soon, we'll have to buy new shoes, but there's no money. But all the old ladies in the boarding house say I'm the best soul. So it's not for nothing that I eat my bread and breathe this air. Camille, and indeed, all the old people in the boarding house simply adored, which caused a lot of dissatisfaction with the management. But the girl simply did not understand why she was scolded for this. After all, on the contrary, the superior should praise. Everyone is satisfied. No conflicts. What is there to say? She could calm down even the most conflicted and bad-tempered pensioner. Persuade her to take a pill or eat such unpalatable porridge. Camille, but you're a good talker. Always telling her her friend and realizing what that damn porridge had made, bringing her down. But you talk like you're gonna eat it and spoon it. No, what's a spoonful? You'll be lining up for more. And everyone laughed. It especially pissed off the superintendent. After all, if one of the patients was cranky or didn't want to eat or take pills, everyone turned to Camille for some reason. The relatives and the patients themselves often called her to comfort, look after, feed, and help with hygiene. Although before the appearance of this girl in her boarding house, all the questions were solved only by her head Evelyn. Yeah, she knew what they called her behind her back. A particularly venomous snake. But she didn't give a damn about that, no matter what. One day a general came into their institution, and it was the one who suffered from memory loss, and whom Sophia, an orderly, had once looked after. So thought the wench. She didn't just walk him out with Camille. But when it came to thanking a man like that, they both didn't say a word about the superintendent. In the past, Smith would have run to her for advice. And Camille, she's a without Sophia. It's all right. She's still got them dancing. But the opportunity presented itself to the headmistress immediately. On Wednesday, she summoned Camille from duty to her office and ordered her to inform her that she was staying on for the second day. You see, Nancy, who's changing you. Well, she needs to go to the pension fund right away. There's no one to replace her but you, so Camille will have to work. Camille sighed heavily and realized that she wouldn't be able to have a good rest, but to refuse would mean to fall into the disfavor of the headmistress even more. But the plus side was that she received money for each duty, so she could buy herself a new vegetable. She nodded and lowered her arms. And it's okay. You'll work. You'll get a decent paycheck later, and I'll give you a bonus. Thanks, Evelyn. You're welcome. Go to work. Then you can sleep at night. By the way, 200 hours. If you say anything, I'll let you, but only from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and no more. Camille nodded and left the office, went to the locker room, and sat down on a bench near her locker. She rested her head on the cold iron to cool her thoughts and closed her eyes. I wonder how her old man is doing. Who was he? Wouldn't he take offense at her? At least there's something I can do. Work is work. He's probably got a pension by now. Yes? And if he's sitting there all the time, I'm sure we'll see him again. But Stephen, that was the name of the old man from the park bench, did have a pension, and a lot of it. He'd worked all his life in the organs, and he'd made general. And then he was invited to the department in his native institute of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which he also graduated from, graduating 6 young lieutenant. But recently his family has not been doing well, and he himself did not understand why. The children seem to be settled. They live, however, abroad, often come for holidays, but all the same, he kept his wife long ago. About 10 years ago, she caught pneumonia, and 3 days later, the doctors stated death. They said it was a new flu virus, a stamp against which there is no effective treatment. From that moment, Stephen's own disease began to progress. On the background of nervous disorder, he rapidly began to lose his sight, but let him go blind, but not to see the world. And what am I going to do without Sophia? My children and grandchildren are abroad. They call me, but who needs a blind old man? No one. So he lived alone like a finger. Lately, however, a former pupil of his, Christopher, started visiting him. A good and savvy investigator, up and coming and very promising. Christopher came to his teacher purely by chance for advice, and when he saw his condition, he realized that the old man alone cannot survive. And from that moment, he almost every day, well, at least for 5 minutes, but will run away. He'd ask how he was doing. He'd drop off groceries, buy medicine. Christopher, why are you wasting your money? Young researchers, I know they don't get much, and you're young. You should be spending it on girls for your family, and you spend it on me. And I'll take offense. If you don't take my money, it's over there on the dresser. Take it. It won't offend an old man. And Christopher would take, but would take so 10 or 20 R, but no more than that. Rather to really not offend the old man. But the experience that the retired general was giving him was worthless, and Christopher understood that. So he went and helped, learned, and it paid off. The young investigator was considered the best. They put him on the most difficult and responsible cases, and that was worth a lot. How are you doing, Christopher? The general asked him, looking into his eyes like his own child. There is one thing I cannot give me. And Christopher opened his briefcase folder and took out the next case. Read its materials, Stephen, and both of them analyzed it to the smallest detail. And the investigator rejoiced like a child. After all, the old and experienced general pointed out to him such points of detail, which he himself would not have paid attention to or would not have thought of these or those conclusions. But Christopher, you taking a case out of the office, I don't approve of that in any way. As an old professional investigator, you know, it's one thing for me not to tell anyone and another thing. If someone in your department sees it, then you're in trouble too. Yes, I understand, Stephen Williams. But you see, it's one thing for me to give you my word for it. It's another thing to read a witness's statement from a sheet of paper that he held in his hand, signed, and everything. I agree, but be careful. You know that very well. And Christopher was nodding his head. But one day what the old general had so much feared happened. The case was lost. And what was most interesting, Christopher could not understand where he had lost the materials of the new investigation. Either someone had dragged them out of his office or had really taken them to Stephen Williams and simply didn't realize he'd left them behind. This is the second time I've broken into the office and the apartment, and I can't find a damn thing. Maybe he did leave it with the general, but strangely, I never showed him the file. Maybe. And Christopher pounded his fist on the desk with anger. The young investigator's carelessness had played havoc with his office door. Loudly spoken words into the void. Attentive ears in the corridor, his words were heard by the right ears, and a snide smile played on the man's face. There you are, young man, he thought. No need to nurse a thief. You've lost your case. Do me a favor and answer for it, to the full extent of the law. Yeah, well, every man has his detractors. But Christopher had more and more in the department every day. To say what to say, his youth and success, beauty and rapid growth in the career ladder did not give rest. A lot of people intended to mess with him. But who would go against the favorite of the bosses? And the bosses showered Christopher with many favors. Need an apartment? No problem. First in line. Need a car? No problem. Let's get you a used Jeep. Need a summer vacation? It's always you, dear Christopher. And plus a vacation to the minister's boarding house. But Christopher himself wouldn't listen to anyone when they told him it couldn't be like that. You're flying too high. Watch it, boy, you'll fall. Though the investigator himself did not listen to anyone. Intuition and the general's advice won't let me fall. Though Stephen himself saw all this and wanted to tell Christopher to be more careful, but his success, the old man himself believed in his integrity and luck. But in a moment the luck turned away. One day Stephen Williams was called home by telephone, and an unfamiliar voice said quietly to the radio operator, mocking every word, "Well, General." Yes, jumped from this favorite Christopher. They detained him on suspicion of tampering with the case. You know how to raise a replacement, don't you, General? Maybe that's how you earned your general's stripes, too. Who's talking? It's not a joke. Call the 3rd Department yourself. Find out for your favorite. And the speaker hung up, and the short beeps sounded in the old investigator's ears for a long time. Stephen stood by the phone and could not believe what he had heard. If it had happened to someone else, he simply would not believe it. But Christopher really did often carry cases with him. Could he have lost them or something? Lost, but there's no way he's a forger. No, we should call. He fumbled for the phone number of his home department and asked the desk clerk to put him through to Deputy Sam. Sam, hi. It's Stephen. Oh, hi, Stephen. How you doing? I'm fine. Why don't you tell me what's going on with Christopher? You don't know. He got arrested. Not for nothing, but for losing a case. But you know, somebody's got a grudge against him. And the lost case was turned into a forgery case, and that's a lot of time. Yeah, I realize that. But it's true that they can't find the case. Well, it was already done, and all the evidence had been collected. A guilty verdict has been written. Just give it to the court and hold it. Get your captain's stars. But no, you show up for work in the morning, and there's a search of the office. Where's the case file? He's not here. And it's a tough case. You know who? Where from? Christopher and I have been talking. Probably about 6 months ago. Stephen lied to avoid hurting his student even more. Who knows who's listening to them? And how could it be used later on in the future? Yes, thought the old man. What a turn of events. And the case of the deputy prosecutor himself was taken on a bribe. And there's a lot of other stuff on top of that. I don't know. Either he lost it willfully or recklessly, but it came from the top. A command to reclassify the loss of investigation materials as deliberate concealment of traces of a crime, and with selfish motives. And this is already, my friend, my dear friend, you understand, threatens a lot of problems. Where is he now? Yes, in the detention center for now. Then it's up to the courts. Okay, thanks. Keep me in the loop if you need anything. Call me anytime. And the general hung up the phone. He suddenly felt sick, and he could hardly stand on his feet, instantly sat down on a chair near the phone. No, he should go outside, get some fresh air, to think. He quickly threw on his jacket and put on his old but still sturdy and warm overshoes and went outside. Stephen Williams liked to think and walk. But even now his head was not working well. Think, old fool, think. How can Christopher be helped now? He didn't know. That Christopher had not falsified the case, of that he was sure. But that he might have lost it. You're a fool, Christopher. Used to dragging your cases around with you. Now he's got it all to himself. And then his heart snapped with unbearable pain. Stephen had long ago attached himself to Christopher like a native son. He regarded his defeat as his own failure. The old man simply sat down on his favorite park benches and cried. He couldn't contain his own emotions, which were overflowing. He probably would not have been as worried about the children as he was about Christopher. At that very minute, Camille was walking through the park from work, having been in the boarding house for 2 days. She could hardly stand on her feet and simply could not believe that the manager had let her go home and had not left her for the 3rd day. I'm going to die if I stay in this wonderful facility for another 5 minutes. I urgently need to go home to the bathroom, and then I'll sleep for sure until tomorrow morning without the back legs shaking and on dropping my jacket. Camille promptly got out from under herself, all thinking lest the superintendent, God forbid, should notice her and leave her for the 3rd day. She walked along the road and dreamed of taking a shower and falling asleep on the old, but such a favorite couch, sat in the middle, but so comfortable to sleep on, thought Camille, and imagined how the Chinese have a thin woolen blanket with a head and would sleep on it. Strange as it may seem, the second 24 hours passed quietly and peacefully, and probably all because it was a day off. All the superiors had gone home, and the new young doctor was in charge, and therefore, that's why everything went so smoothly. I was able to sleep not 2, but a whole 4 o'clock and earned a chocolate bar from the grateful old lady. That thought made her very happy. What does it take to be happy? Thought the girl, to go home and sing so cheerfully. Despite the overcast weather, her plans were simply not destined to come true. At least not in the next few days, which put her usual way of life upside down. As Camille walked home through the familiar park, she wondered if the nice old man she had eaten ice cream with was waiting for her on the familiar bench. And has he forgotten his invitation? No, he hasn't. There sits my old man. Camille saw a familiar pale figure sitting on a familiar bench in a gray coat and the same gray windbreaker, but as she approached the bench itself, she was simply stunned. She had seen old people crying before, and the picture itself had always looked horrifying. Sadly, now the tears weren't just rolling down her cheeks. They were pouring from the old man's eyes, making the already faded color of his eyes almost colorless. Could this really be? God, how long would these people suffer? But who had hurt him? What had happened in the couple days she'd been working? Good afternoon, Stephen Williams. Are you crying again? Who hurt you? The man raised his eyes and looked at her with an unbelieving gaze. How he had grown old and beaten in the last 2 days. It was frightening. Camille sang with fear and a piercing cold, but I tried not to let it show from the situation itself. Camille, is that you? Yes, I'm fine. It's just that you understand, young lady. A student of mine is being accused of a terrible crime he didn't commit. Even though I had warned him to always be careful, he did. Now you blame yourself. Don't be, Stephen Williams. Your pupil is not 5 years old or 10. I think he's an adult. He should know what he's doing and how to do it. Camille, you just don't understand. Christopher was like my own son. Where are your children? The girl knew very well how to talk to old people. And now she's just trying to change the subject. Yes, that my children, they have been living in America since 20 years. Their children were born there. That is, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I'm almost 70 years old. My dear Camille, how do I look? But you know, you look about 60, 62 years old. Why don't you want to move in with them? You know America. It's the land of opportunity. Come on, what's the land of opportunity? The decaying West has always been a bunch. There was a note of steel in the old man's voice. Oh, come on, Camille thought. We should just shut this whole thing down for good, or the old man will have a fit. And then they'll say I drove him crazy talking about America. But she really wanted to go to this country of unlimited opportunity and success. And here he is. Camille, I apologize if I answered you rudely. I'm just an old Soviet man, and socialism is closer to me than capitalism. And my children and grandchildren have been asking me to go there for a long time. The pensioner began to tell. A little calmed down, but what to do there? Go to the beach or feed pigeons, so this pleasure, and here is enough. There's nothing to do. And Christopher, well, that's my apprentice. He thought about it for a minute, and the old warrior's logic and intuition were making themselves felt. Stephen really wanted to talk. So he spoke, and the girl listened attentively. She realized that here and now a lucky lottery ticket might fall into her hands, and then the way to America would open up. So my Christopher, he's a talented investigator, works for the police. There's a police station not far from here, and he comes to me for advice on this or that case. He always had one downside. Christopher often took criminal cases from his office and brought them to me. I hope you're not a silly girl and realize it's illegal to take a case out of an investigator's office. And he did. He lost the file. Camille was well aware of the dangers of such a turn, even to the best investigator. He didn't just lose it. I think it was stolen. And it's a big case, but now the case is gone. And Christopher was charged with falsifying documents and put in jail. Has there really been a verdict yet? Did the girl put her hand over her mouth? No, they're only keeping him in pretrial detention, but they'll bring him to trial. We need to find that lost file. But Stephen Williams, you realize how unrealistic that is. It could be anywhere. I understand, but the day before, he called me and said that he had searched his office and his apartment and found nothing. So he could only come to me with the file and leave it with me. God, what an old fool. I must go home at once. I'm sorry, dear Camille. The situation is such that our essay with you is temporarily postponed. I hope to see you again, but I'll certainly wait for you here at this very spot every morning at 10 o'clock. And raising his hat, The man walked towards the exit of the park. Camille's sleep and fatigue vanished, and she jumped up from the bench and ran after the old man. "Stephen Williams, I'm sorry to intrude, but may I help you? I don't know how, but my legs are fast. My eyes can see very well. I can look under the couch or poke around in the corners. You'll have to excuse my insistence. Besides, tomorrow is my day off. I can afford to help you as much as I can. But why not? I'm pleased that you're willing to help out like this. So, I'll do it. I'll have to shut down the whole house, though. If there's nothing to do, at least you can help me clean up. I'll make sure you have lunch. I've got a neighbor who helps me clean, grocery shop, and cook. But I'll help you. She hasn't eaten anything since this morning, and her belly is treacherously disfigured." Stephen directly stopped at that sound. He may not have seen well, but the fact that his hearing remained excellent, there's no arguing about it. "Baby, my dinner first, and then everything else. And a hungry soldier is a bad soldier." He walked with this girl to his house and thought how fate often brings people together. Here she had brought him and Christopher together. Now here was this girl, Camille, working in an old people's home. He smiled to himself for the first time in days and thought it was so you old fool wouldn't feel lonely. Should we let her in the house? Yes. People should always stand above the material world. All that bling. That's what he kept saying. Money, power, and pride will ruin you. So respect people if you can't love them. Don't be proud. Never give up. But he must have missed the point somewhere. And now he's walking home with this girl, with the clear intention of feeding her at the very least, helping Christopher and himself find the lost files. How he gets it back is another matter. "Come in, Camille here. Put on my granddaughter's slippers. You can see your size. Wash the bathtub, towels, wash your hands. And if you want to take a shower, I'll make you something to eat. I haven't eaten since this morning." "Yeah, thanks. Hands, I think. I used to shower at work. Believe me, we're very clean. And don't look poorly dressed and your stomach's churning from hunger for nothing." And she shrugged. "It's just the way things are." He poured her a full plate of delicious Navarre borscht and put it on the table, added sour cream and sliced bread. The second was broth, but also rice and cutlets. Yes, thanks to the neighbor on the cooked quite a lot will be for 3 days. Not with such an appetite as this skinny girl eats. It won't last long. Well, he enjoyed watching her eat, and for some reason Camille reminded him of Christopher, a young and hungry man just like her. Stephen smiled and motioned her a plate of bread. Camille ate and couldn't get enough of such delicious borscht, and with sour cream she hadn't eaten in a long time. Probably not since her parents had died. Only her mother could make such delicious borscht. She was the only one who added garlic to it. She noticed how warmly the old general was looking at her and stopped a little. It really wasn't nice to bang a spoon on a plate like that when you were hungry. "Sorry, Stephen Williams. This borscht is just like my mom used to make, except she used to add garlic. But my neighbor, who cooks it the same way at first, added garlic at least from this spice. I got heartburn. So que la vie, but that's okay. It's really good. You eat it. But there's also cutlets and side dishes. Well, probably rice." Half an hour later, they were sitting in the kitchen, drinking fragrant tea, talking like old friends, or at least like teacher and student. "Stephen Williams, what else can I do for you?" "Yes. Here, let's see Christopher's file under the sofa, under the chair, and under the table. Maybe it fell there, and I'll look under the top, though I doubt it's too big for it to be here, to just lay there like that without anyone seeing it." It's true Christopher's files were always weighty and voluminous. He carefully prepared documents, collected evidence, and in general prepared material on conscience, especially when the case was already going to trial. He wouldn't miss it. That's why Stephen went through the whole apartment for the umpteenth time and found nothing. And Camille had already looked in all the corners, even moved the sofa. But Stephen Williams, I'm sorry, but you've got more dust than cases, especially criminal ones. I'm going to get a floor cloth and a mop, and at least mop your floor. Don't even think about arguing. And then we'll take another look together. But when the floor is dry, they spent the rest of the evening going over the apartment one more time. They even went so far as to rearrange the furniture, but they never found the case, and the old investigator was afraid of one case, simply stolen from Christopher's office. That makes this whole thing look like a setup. He must have crossed somebody's path. What can I say? A smart man is always a threat to a fool, especially when that fool is in power. Excuse me, Stephen Williams. Did you say something? No, I'm sorry, Camille. Just thinking out loud, I guess. Come on, girl. Let's go out to dinner, and I'll throw you something to eat and let you go home. You probably didn't even sleep on the job. Yeah, I worked 2 days. And after your hearty lunch, I'm just so sleepy. Let's go. So are you going to work tomorrow, or what? I might need a day off if things don't change tonight. The old man quickly packed her home-cooked meal and poured a full plate of rice and 4 cutlets. He set out sliced pickles and tomatoes and commanded her to wash her hands and go home to eat that evening. Camille walked with a full bag of groceries, vegetables, fruit, cooked meat dishes and borscht. Bulk, caring hands in a 2-liter jar. God, how lucky she was. At least she would be able to eat enough and sleep without waking up until the morning from the hungry carnage in her stomach. Camille walked and rejoiced, but she did not notice her small happiness. The attentive eye of the man who escorted her, or they would give the old general's house, and then had already led her herself up to her single room. It was he who had been involved in Christopher being put in the SI zoo on a trumped-up case, but he was the only one who knew the case, which had been brought against a respected man, and which should not have gone to trial. Lost? No, Christopher had not lost it or destroyed it, nor had it been falsified. The case had simply been stolen. But who did it? No one knew. Neither the man who was closely watching the girl from the corner was not Christopher himself, nor many other participants of this confusing story. And the case was archly important. If it was not found in the house of the young investigator, his arrest would simply be canceled, and he would be released. What wasn't supposed to happen? They didn't take the case to their teacher. The man often talked to himself. Now, I asked the same question to my second, and I asked him the same question. He mentally went over this option and realized that it was most likely yes. And now this girl appeared in the house of the old investigator so inappropriately. Apparently, the old devil smelled something wrong and certainly invited her to his house to secretly give the papers. And she was a fool to fall for it. No, we should follow her. What if she's got the file? That could be a very real possibility. This Stephen isn't as stupid as he wants everyone to think. He's old school. He must have sensed he might get a visit. If he gave the girl the case, what kind of case would Thor take? That's exactly where the case is. But then his thoughts were interrupted by the horn of a car that jumped out of the corner, which rushed so fast that it fell with mud from the nearest puddle. Oh shit, you're the only thing missing here. Serta fell head over heels. The man began to examine himself, thinking how he in such a form will go to his superiors with a report. But the deed was done, and there was no way to refuse the report. All right, I'll go as it is. Let the high officials see how we work. Simple soldiers of fortune. They sit clean and showered on a leather chair and do not sip in the warmth and dryness of coffee. But when he looked up after a moment, he noticed that Camille had disappeared from his sight. But that's all I needed. Missing the damn girl. What's the matter? She's gone. It's okay. I know where you live. He rushed toward her house and practically caught up with her in the driveway. At that moment, Camille was standing at the doorway, talking to her neighbor, clutching her bag tightly on her shoulder. And there you are looking at it, clutching the bag tightly to you. Surely the case there is an old devil, but I am not a fool, which means that tomorrow we must take a brigade and urgently here. The man didn't even bother to stand under Camille's windows and watch her further. He was sure that it was about her bag and everything else could be done tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow you and old Williams will go to jail, and Christopher will go to jail. And I'm back to being the best investigator in the department. You shouldn't have moved me out of my position. John. It was John, who'd been losing his long way with his teeth. Now he's just out of a job. But he didn't like being out of a job. And he found a trivial way to steal a serious case from Christopher and frame it for forgery. But the amazing thing is, the case itself didn't even have to be stolen. One day it simply disappeared, and no one knew where it was or who might have taken it. Everyone in the department looked at each other askew, but no one could point a finger at the thief. And now John simply turned around and went back to headquarters to report the results of his investigation to his superiors. Camille, having had enough to eat, fell asleep like a baby. Stephen, however, could not sleep. He lay in bed wondering what he should do. Next, shedding tears in the park on a bench was silly. It wouldn't get Christopher out of jail because he was turning from side to side and thinking who could have stolen the case and how it would now turn out for his student. But whatever the version of subsequent events, none of them would be the most promising for Christopher. He's still going to jail, and someone's gonna get another star. Shouldn't we wait for that someone to come out and then fight? That's probably the right thing to do. Knowing your enemy is better than fighting windmills. But it doesn't work for me. A day in jail, a year lost. So tomorrow I will take action, and Stephen closed his eyes. Surprisingly, he fell asleep quickly, though he had not wanted to sleep before. At night, he dreamed of his dead mother for the first time. She stood on the doorstep of their apartment and pointed to the closet. "Mommy, I'm so happy to see you. But where are you pointing? What are you trying to tell me?" The man looked at the corner his mother was pointing at and was surprised. There stood an old wooden mop, and on it was his shirt, on which, as unaccountably Pavlovsky, were 4 stars of the captain. Wow! Did his mother, and in the other world, let him in the uniform on the floor rags? Yes, she's like that. Maybe. Mother never wanted her son to follow in his father's footsteps and join the militia. Stephen's dad was killed by gangsters when he was a year old. Since then, his mother tried her best to keep him away from the police. It came to the point that his mother even tore rags into his uniform and washed him with them. She checked the windows, tied in the vegetable garden, bushes, tomatoes. It came to absurdity, but now she did not want to laugh at her son's choice of his profession, but warned him about something. In his sleep, Stephen lifted a corner of the floor cloth, and a huge rat jumped out at him. At that second, the man woke up in a cold sweat. Well, there's your answer to the question. Christopher definitely did not lose the case and did not falsify his case stolen by the rat. Stephen smiled to himself. It was like a stone had been dropped in his soul. He wiped his sweaty forehead with his hand and stood up. There were still a lot of things to do. Make coffee, eat, call Camille, and ask how she was doing. Even though she wasn't, she's probably still asleep. Anyway, the most important thing is to find that rat that jumped on him in his sleep. And I'll bet you're the rat. You're the rear guard. Your own investigators would never do that. At least not a decent investigator. You're like a rat out from under a rag, and you're gonna bite. No, I didn't get killed in Syria or Iran. I didn't go crazy on opium. But here, and here I'm going to be driven crazy by my own rats. The general got up and put his feet in his slippers and went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. It was a set morning ritual that set the whole day. He didn't start his day without a cup of tea. Stephen stood on the balcony of his apartment, drinking tea and thinking how he should proceed. What to do? To begin with, go to talk to the chief. Good thing he will accept me and introduce me into the investigation group. And then we'll see. Stephen often liked to talk out loud to himself. No wonder who could hear him in the apartment. Only his flowers and his fish. But neither of them can say anything to anyone. Christopher inherited that habit from him, and it's played havoc with him. What if he's not allowed to be investigated? No way. I mean, he's known to the department for a long time. He's a recognized authority. Christopher's his apprentice. They'll say you're pulling for your favorite. But Stephen never had a favorite among the kids or the students. Yes, he might have singled out a talented investigator or forensic scientist, but no one was his mind or his servant. One should be valued for one's earned talent, and no more, and not for patronage. And they'll tell you, friend, that it's a personal interest and voila. Okay, I'll walk around, and then I'll see. I'll go with what I got. The man went outside and raised his head to the sky. He said hello to his late wife in his mind. Up there in heaven. That's how he always started his day. It was a kind of prayer, but praying is good. I have to go help Christopher now. I wonder how that Camille is. How did she sleep? Was everything good? Maybe I should go over and see her. After all, she wrote him yesterday on a piece of paper her address. And by the way, it is at the end of the park, that old 5-story building. And the second floor is not high. The old man won't have to walk up high. Well, I'll drop by since you invited me. They're not in the spotlight. I could use a face in my business. But approaching Camille's house, the old man was dumbfounded under the entrance where the girl lived. There were several brigades of militia. Wow, the old man thought. As they say on the catcher, and the beast runs. Really, it's all strange. On the one hand, maybe it's not for Camille. This time Camille woke up to the fact that her already flimsy doors were banging, probably with all hands and feet. At least, the rumble was unbelievable. Why should I be surprised? After all, John Barnett had taught his superiors so much about everything that he almost wanted to checkmate her and detain her. John, understand, thieves and charlatans are worth taking out for profit. At night they are not. Igor Valentinovich, there's no need to be in such a hurry. We'll go in the morning. Let's take a warm one out of bed. Understand, you're a sleepy man, more talkative. He doesn't yet understand anything that's going on around him. It's not like someone who's been walking around all day nervous and on edge. I hope you understand. Yes, I do, John. I do. I just can't wait to close this case. I mean, it's our employee and an embarrassment to the department. Yeah, well, it's an embarrassment to the department. You'd rather have stars on your epaulets or a new position in the ministry. And read it. Don't tell me. Your power and counsels shot my grandfather and my grandmother together as white guards and servants of the Empress. So we know your bloodthirsty motives. Of course, the captain did not tell his superior all this. Why spoil his opinion of himself beforehand? Well, John, of course you apologize if I've been rude and unfair to you before. You see, this Christopher, he's really solved a lot of cases. But no offense, but yours has always been an honorable one. Second. Actually, it's first place now. I'm glad to hear that. And you know, I always try to do my best work, although I'm not always so lucky. Why do you have to do it by rote? Garnett thought and smiled through his teeth at his boss. And now, since morning, he had been leading the detention brigade in their neck of the woods to Camille's address. Yes, it was her door that the riot police were now breaking in and trying to kick down that flexible barrier. Who is there? Camille shouted, as she had never shouted in her life, afraid that she would be swept away by this wave of hatred. John heard her scream and signaled the riot police to stop. That's the kind of amputee they get. But what to do is that he's the boss and only he can make the decision. It's the police. Camille, open up. The girl tangled herself more tightly in the old robe and opened the door. Looking through the slit at the big men with machine guns standing on the landing, she did not understand what could have happened. And through the dream, she simply did not know how to act. Who are you? I'm John Barnett, police captain, and I have a warrant to search your apartment, and I can either leave you alone or arrest you. And believe me, I have every reason to do so. It's strange, John. I've always considered myself a man of intelligence. And you just barge into this nice girl's apartment and search the place. Where are the witnesses? The witnesses? Where's forensics? The words of Stephen Williams made John not only turn his whole body back, but almost jump in the air. Yeah, thought the investigator. There's the main man in this whole group. Christopher couldn't have so cleverly thought it up all by himself and arranged it. Out of nowhere, it's the catcher and the hunted. No, it would be more accurate to say a wolf. Here you are, Comrade General Stephen Williams. I was thinking of coming to see you. I hope it's not a search. Imagine that. With all legal grounds to visit and legally inspect your apartment. I hope, as a retired general, you're okay with accepting your colleague, but with all love and open arms. But you show me the warrant that will open my doors for you. That's one thing. And two, why are you banging on this sweetheart's door? The bandit didn't let John finish his sentence, impudently interrupting the old General. John, I see such a concept as politeness and respect for old colleagues is not familiar to you, and you don't forgive me. Scared long ago, and Christopher yours. John was. He wanted to say that it was he who had set Christopher up, but he bit his tongue in time. Aha, thought the old General. So that's where the missing case came from. But he didn't say anything out loud, but only smiled. I can handle it myself somehow. Not such an important bird. He's a fool. If you started it like this. The General smiled and looked at Camille. Camille, they haven't told you anything yet, except that they almost broke the door down. That's good, so there's nothing. If they decided to scare you like that, and then interrogate you. It's old school. Even though you, John, should realize that there are a lot of new methods to get a client to talk, you're still working the old school way. Stephen Williams, are you part-time now? As a defense attorney or covering for an accomplice? An accomplice in what? John, what can you charge me with? That Christopher stole the case, gave it to you, and you gave it to Camille yesterday. Not for nothing. She was pulling a bag home yesterday, and she was holding it with her hands so tight, it looked like she was carrying diamonds in it. So, John, you're a fool. I mean, really, you dumped the whole case file. Just like that from the doorstep to the first person you saw. John was shaken, and especially when behind his back the riot policeman started joking at him and laughing, saying that you are a fool, you investigator. You don't understand what's going on. Stop it, John shouted at the law enforcers. You are here as help, not as counselors. We don't advise you home. We're just stating a fact. Fool, what are you doing, getting involved in this case? The O&L team leader said to him, and turned around and left the apartment. Guys, let's get out of here. Let this investigator himself fight with old men and women. And under the loud cackling of the company of big OMO men, he began to descend the stairs. John's face was covered with red spots. The investigator began to choke with anger. He realized how much he'd missed. Now, Stephen Williams, although you are known here, I'm going to ask you to leave the apartment and not interfere with the investigation. The investigator tried to take a few deep breaths, so we don't screw this up, and pointed his hand to the old General at the door. But he was not going to leave, and began to dig in the inner pocket of his Syrian coat. Look at this lawyer's license. I want to represent Camille if she now verbally agrees to have me as her attorney. You don't mind? And he looked intently at the decayed and frightened Camille, who at these words nodded her head. Yes, I give this your verbal consent. Let Stephen Williams represent my interests, and you don't you dare barge in like that. And we're already here. So, please, a warrant for the address of your apartment, and I'll ask you first if there are any illegal items, drugs or weapons in the apartment, or any investigative cases. You're not in a hurry, are you? Okay, think about it. Stephen Williams, though a retired general, is a smart man, but he's not all-powerful. Yes, Camille, think it over and try to be honest. Stephen Williams smiled at her and nodded his head. Say what you want to say. Don't be afraid of anything. Camille looked at the old general perplexed and nodded her head. She began to tell him that she was not hiding anything. She has no such illegal items, and even less criminal affairs. She now realized the reason why the investigators had burst into her house since morning. But she didn't let it show. and the girl was good. At once she understood what was going on. The general thought to himself, I didn't show it. If you had a little help, you could be a good specialist. But I'd like to help Christopher, and then I'd like to do Camille. Maybe put her somewhere else, like the business house, for example, in their department, or a clerk at the courthouse. Better pay and less work. Otherwise, she's skin and bones. In the meantime, John was going through the girl's apartment from head to toe, but he realized that in this miserable situation there was no case. There was simply nowhere to hide it. An old couch and a dresser, a small closet and a couple of chairs, a table and everything in the kitchen, a table and a couple of stools, an old refrigerator. His men had already dug through everything, but they looked at the chief with bewilderment. They said, "Sorry, there's nothing. It's a real case. How could there be on that criminal authority could be the size of a considerable? You can't hide it under the carpet or shove it under the floor." John kicked the corner of the couch with his foot and turned around and waved to the guys, saying, "Let's finish up. Thanks, Camille. Sorry, I don't know your middle name. For your cooperation. Tomorrow, please come to this address and familiarize yourself. Sign the record of today's actions. But I have work tomorrow. I can't." "Well, nothing the day after tomorrow then. The report can wait," said John. And he thought to himself that it was not worth displaying this zero result in front of his superiors. That John hadn't found anything. That's how shamefully you run. Stephen, though, was a retired general and realized that his words were a display of lawlessness, but he couldn't take a jab at his colleague. True, Barnett did not say anything to such remarks of his, but only slowed his step, shooting his eyes in his direction. "Wait, old man. I'll see you again." When the door slammed behind him, Stephen Williams sat down on a chair in Camille's room and looked around. Poverty in all things, not unlike his general's mansion. "Thank God you made it. Don't worry. I hope you realize what they were looking for." The man's voice sounded calm and confident. "Yes, I do. And for nothing. I don't have it and couldn't have it." "Okay, let's make it so you're off today." The girl nodded her head and sat down on the bed. "Then let's get some rest, and I'll take care of business. If anything, I'll come over to your place, if you don't mind. You're at work tomorrow. Then I'll wait for you the day after tomorrow on a bench in the park." And nodding his head, he got up and left the apartment, going to the familiar police department. If the fish is rotting, one must act with one's head. I'll find out everything, and then be what happens. But I hope I can still get Christopher out of jail. I'd hate to see such talent go to waste. What can I say? A week later, Christopher walked out of the detention center and stood on the porch and raised his head to the sun. He stood and reveled in that feeling of the sun and the wind on his face with the freedom he had almost lost. Christopher reveled in the strength he felt in his hands that were not handcuffed. Now he understood all of his charges who had gone to prison through his fault or the fault of his coworkers. "Hello, Christopher. But here you are free." Stephen Williams stood outside the detention center with Camille and smiled. "Stephen Williams, darling, you're my teacher. Is that really you?" The boy promptly ran down the steps and with outstretched arms embraced his old mentor, accepting him like a father. He stood and hugged his old teacher and wept, unashamed of his own tears as he cried, "Do you need this now? You shouldn't hold back your feelings." The man hugged the young man and patted him on the back. After a few minutes, he raised his face to the general and a smile played on it. "I now understand all my under-trial detainees, how hard it is for them, how hard it is to wear handcuffs. It is simply unbearable. Now you're on the outside, and everything will be fine. You know I didn't take the case, and if I did, I couldn't lose it. We got a case. Let's go. First, we'll go to my place, pray, talk, and then we'll go again. By the way, Camille, she's my new friend, and she helped me in many ways, particularly in your release. So you owe your freedom to her to a certain extent. Thank you, dear Camille. I am very, very grateful." But why was I released? Stephen Williams, I honestly don't understand a damn thing. The cell door just opened, and they told me to pack up and get out. And here I am. Is that a bad thing? My young friend, no. But it just puts me in a bit of a quandary, so to speak. Is this all a hoax? How real is this? Real, my friend. Very real. Now, come on over here and help me eat. My neighbor cooked me some delicious borscht, potatoes, cutlets. Jesus, after the government food, it all looks like food of the gods. The Trinity rode in the cab and kept silent. Each thought about his own, about the frailty of fate, when even the smartest and most experienced investigator can make a mistake that costs him his freedom, afraid and throwing things into the washing machine. Christopher sat down at the table and inhaled the aroma of making this borscht. How delicious it was. Christopher worked with a spoon. It was like he hadn't eaten for years, and he wanted to eat for years to come. Christopher, you're not borscht. There's a pot of borscht over there. And then there's the second course. So there's a spoonful, and a plate, and I'm lying down. You can't imagine how good it all tastes after the government cargo. I believe you. But by the way, there is still a second one there, so no hurry and please. Go and make tea. Christopher looked carefully at his teacher. In his eyes read a mute question. Stephen smiled and wagged his finger at Christopher. Christopher, I hope this case will teach you something in the future. It's not a good idea to drop a case anywhere, much less take it out of the office. It'll do more than teach me. Burn that simple truth into my forehead with a hot iron. And the guy tapped himself on the forehead. The general himself was surprised at how simple and complex this case was at the same time. But every case teaches us something. He looked at Christopher and asked quietly, "Remember where you put the case?" For the life of me, I can't remember. If I did, I guess none of this would have happened. That's true. By the way, I say hello to you. Our cleaning lady Nancy's in Notto. But how did she get in? Oh, you fool, Christopher. Yes, in a very direct way. Camille and Christopher looked at each other uncomprehendingly. Both really did not understand how a simple cleaning lady could be involved in the loss of criminal materials, and even such an important criminal authority as the Bull. So, I'll start in order. The file was found yesterday, and you probably put it on top of the closet. But the one with the documents, so to speak, you put it there and safely forgot, because you never put the case there. Consequently, your brain didn't register that information. And again, your fault is that you put it on the top. But badly, the case simply fell into the gap between the wall of the closet and the wall. And imagine, it stayed there safely hidden from everyone. I'm a Turk, aren't I? You said that, and now I remember. Yes, I put it upstairs. I thought I'd put it in the cupboard and lock it. But I got distracted, and as luck would have it, I forgot about it. Well, not about it, but where I put it. And it fell. Although probably when I was moving furniture, and how did I not think to look in the space between the closet and the wall? Well, really. And Christopher tapped himself on the head. He only now remembered that he had actually put the case on the cabinet. And then he had been distracted and had safely forgotten where he had put it. And the case might have fallen behind the cabinet itself when he was closing the office door. A trivial oversight by any human being, which turned into imprisonment. But thank God, everything was found, and the truth came out. And Nancy, thanks to her cleanliness, opened your office, decided to clean it. And get this, she looked behind the cabinet and saw the lost file. But she doesn't know who lost what, so she took it to the duty officer, although our warrant officer himself, and you know very well what happened to him, almost had a heart attack, even though there was probably a squeal for the whole department. Yeah, that's how our cleaning lady solved the case better than any investigator. She got a bonus and a certificate of merit for it, by the way. And the order to release you, well, that's it. Jesus, who would have thought it would turn out like this? Christopher really didn't understand how it happened. But how was Camille involved in all this? Christopher immediately liked this girl, so he decided to draw her attention to himself. Yes, she was with me when I went into the office, and she was the one who told your cleaning lady to clean behind the closet. Christopher, you really have no idea. It was purely serendipitous. It's just that at my job, they clean all the corners behind all the nightstands and closets, once a week, so to speak, general cleaning. But I got into a conversation with the cleaning lady and asked her if they clean out the closets, and she jumped at the idea and said that it really wouldn't hurt to chase the cobwebs in Christopher's office. Yeah, scare the wicked with a broom. Yeah, you never know where you're gonna find something and where you're gonna lose it. But by the way, why is John Barnett on this case? Who knows? Just jealousy or something. I don't know. It's probably jealousy, by the way. Before you got here, he was the best in the department. Well, in quotes, so to speak. No wonder his zeal and tenacity could be channeled. He'd have been worth a fortune. He could ride you too. He could, but he didn't have a teacher like you. That's why he's messed up. The man doesn't know how to get his own way in front of his bosses. All right, Christopher, I hope we all learn a lesson. You don't have to lose your business. Clean behind the closet and the couch more often. But to me, what seems like a complicated case can be a trivial household occurrence and easily solved with a simple broom. And everyone laughed. Okay, Stephen Williams, thank you for your hospitality, your lunch. I'll pick it up later. And now it's time for me to go home. My bosses gave me 3 days off when I got out of detention, so I'm just gonna sleep it off. Camille, you hang in there with my dear teacher, and I have to go home tomorrow for 24 hours. Camille, can I walk you home? Christopher was as embarrassed as a boy to say such simple words. Yes, in fact, Camille was also embarrassed by the words of the young investigator. After all, the attention of such a guy was new to her. I don't mind. If all three of us go through the park and miss ice cream, and I'm a fool, tapping myself on the forehead. Stephen Williams, I promised you a GSS, but I never delivered. How unkind of me. It's okay. I'm definitely gonna get that girl that coffee. I owe her my freedom, after all. Christopher almost jumped out of his chair and ran into the hallway to get dressed. The old general looked at Camille and quietly, so that Christopher did not hear, said, "Look at him. He is not a bad guy, and he needs a girl like you, not spoiled, who knows the value of money and labor. If he likes me, he's nothing compared to me. Trust my experience. I know Christopher, and I can tell you they'll like you. So don't be a slave. This could be your happiness." Camille nodded her head and went into the hallway to get dressed. She really liked it. Christopher. Handsome, funny. You can tell he's reliable and smart. You can't go wrong with someone like that. The girl really wanted him to walk her home and then ask her out on a date, take her to a cafe on the street, ask her to marry him. She was already in the clouds and she didn't notice the smile on her face. Oh, I see Camille is smiling. That means everything's all right. Stephen Williams went out into the corridor to see the young people off and closed the door behind them. He said a quiet prayer to himself. He had never prayed before, not really. Probably at the funerals of his mother and wife. And so, but when he had asked for Christopher. Yeah, Stephen, you'll soon be a devout man and start bowing before icons, or you'll go into a monastery, a novice to himself. But at the same moment, he thought that it really would be good to go to church, to put a candle to God and ask for forgiveness. But he was raised in the era of developed socialism, and they were not taught to pray and ask the higher powers for help. And for nothing. I want to pray for these young people. May everything be well with them, and they will invite me to their wedding, and maybe even to their christening. He smiled and waved to the young people from the window. Christopher and Camille waved back as they came out of the driveway. Good man, Stephen Williams. He really is a pro at what he does. Can you believe it? Almost 45 years in the force and has raised many generations of good investigators. And he has children, I understand, overseas. Yes, 2 sons, but they didn't want to carry on his work, even though my teacher's grandfather and great-grandfather were. Also, investigators worked in the KGB, even in the ranks of Tsarist Russia. It's like a huge potential. You have no idea. I can't imagine. I'm just a nurse in a nursing home for the elderly. I don't know much about investigators from movies and TV shows. Camille, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to offend you. I'm sure there's a need for people like you. I mean, maybe I'll be a decrepit and infirm old man, and I'll need you to take care of me. It could happen, but it's possible. If we get married and live happily and prosperously until we're old, we will. I'm not asking you to get married right away, but at least I'll ask you out on a date. If you don't mind, maybe our relationship will really make a strong family. I'd really like that. You really like me. Camille said it, and then she flinched. What an idiot. Why did she ask that? Now she looks like a complete idiot. Just like that, she'd let the guy know she was asking him to marry her. The girl blushed and lowered her eyes. Christopher, sorry. I thought about it and said it out loud. It didn't come out right. Camille, you know, I like girls like you, straightforward, who say what they think, and then just apologize like that. I like you, and I'm not saying that out of gratitude for saving me. You're directly sympathetic. In fact, let's go to the coffee shop for coffee. We did. They sat in the cafe almost until it closed, and then they just walked around the city at night, breathing in the smell of fall and fallen leaves, not noticing the cold. For the first time, Camille fell in love with autumn with its yellow leaves, and the former leaves and chestnuts underfoot begging for rain, and the first frosts that burned her face so much, forcing her to breathe through her nose, inhaling puffs of vapor. Christopher, thank you for a wonderful evening, and I'll tell you frankly, for the first time I love the fall, which I used to hate because of its mud, slush, and dampness. And now that she wanted to say when you're around, I'm not afraid of anything, but I bought my tongue. You know, Camille, stopping in time is a great skill. And don't argue. Even if you meant to say something nice, I think my wife should have that skill. And Christopher meant it. He realized that Camille was a wonderful person, even though she was dressed poorly and unfashionably for the weather, but all that was fixable. And it was his job to take care of this girl, who had certainly had her life shaken and seen more than once, but it had not done her heart callousness. He gently pulled her to him and kissed her forehead. Camille, in this embrace of a strong young man, simply melted. She wanted to stand like that and not go anywhere. Not even not to move, not even to breathe. She was simply afraid to scare away her own happiness. But the guy, as if he had read her thoughts, and a little pulling the girl away from him, quietly said, you know, Camille, it's time for you to go to bed. After all, tomorrow I have to work for 24 hours, and the day after tomorrow I will meet you in the morning from work and invite you to breakfast. You're in. I mean, what girl wouldn't want to have breakfast with a guy like you? And you don't have to worry. You won't lose me. But you're freezing and catching a cold in the wind. Maybe, but then you'd have to give me warm milk, a thermometer, and raspberry jam. And that's so nice. All right. Laughs. You're a dreamer. Go home. Here's your entrance. I hope I won't have to walk you to your apartment. Don't you want to? I should, and I already have. I was going to be offended. But Christopher kissed her softly on the lips and turned her around and pushed her toward the door. The girl did not argue. In fact, she was very tired for the day, and her immediate desire was to take a shower and just fall on the bed, not even taking off the warm robe. She walked up to her floor, and a smile played on her face. She had someone she loved and loved her now. At least Camille really hoped that everything would work out fine for them. Christopher saw the windows of Camille's apartment light up, and smiling, he turned around and went home. It was easy and simple for him. After all, the guy realized he had everything in this life, and not just a house and a job, but also a faithful teacher, mentor who will pull out of trouble, will not abandon. There is now a fighting girlfriend, with whom you can build a happy family. But what is not beauty? And he woke up a pile of fallen leaves that fluttered in the air, with golden fireworks. How nice it is to go home to your hometown in the evening like this and realize that you are loved and waited for. I guess that's what happiness is supposed to look like, thought Christopher, walking home. The only one who certainly didn't sleep well that night was Investigator John. He'd never had a failure like this before. Yes, he had his little errors and shortcomings, but he could always turn most of them to his advantage. And what will happen now? The investigator was talking to himself, standing on the balcony and smoking a cigarette. He realized that Christopher was on good account with his superiors, even with the ministerial leadership. Plus, the charges against him were not confirmed. That's how he got even. Maybe I'll leave the militia and go up north. My uncle asked me to go there a couple years ago. Well, no. He wanted to get promoted, get a star. Now I'm sure these atrocities are being torn off me. Christopher won't just let it go. What's Christopher got to do with it? He ain't got nothing to do right now. And the old general will definitely raise it with the ministry and demand my dismissal. But John didn't even realize that none of the participants in this story cared about him. Christopher forgave him and forgot his prank long ago. Camille flew on the wings of love, and Stephen Williams simply let the situation go. It was the old general who understood how self-inflicted guilt could be devastating, often to the point of insanity and suicide. Serves him right. The man thought, standing on the balcony and gazing up at the starry sky. You don't want to dig a hole for your colleague. He smiled at the night sky and the stars and thought to himself, what is his wife doing in the other world? How is his mother doing there? Stephen loved his women, and to that little list, he had now added another name, Camille. The man stood staring into the darkness. He wished he could just, like in the song, part the clouds, or rather that darkness with his hands, and light it up. Day and night. A young and beautiful girl who must have suffered a lot in her life. Nothing, my dear Camille. I won't leave you for nothing. No matter how much you may be against it, no matter how much Christopher himself may oppose it, I'll talk to my people at the ministry tomorrow. Here's a better place for you, but I'll leave my apartment to you. That's for sure. My girl. He'd long ago decided to leave the apartment to someone else. For some reason, he didn't want to describe it to the kids. And why should he? The children live on their own, separately across the sea. If none of his sons wanted to continue his dynasty of explorers, why give the apartment to them? He taught them, gave them a path in life. And as he saw it, the children settled down in America. And all he was left with were old albums and memories. A few months later, Christopher and Camille applied to the registry office and invited to the celebration. All their colleagues and friends, and the witnesses were Stephen Williams and Molly, Camille's best friend. It was a beautiful wedding that many people will remember. What can I say? All the wishes were sincere and from the heart. As for John Barnett, he didn't wait to be appealed against and thrown out of the authorities in disgrace. He wrote a report of his own accord and simply left for the north. And he did the right thing, thought John, looking out the window of the train, respecting him to the cold lands. I would simply not have been allowed to work there. They'd be watching me like rats, and my uncle would help me get a warm job. At the due date, Camille gave birth to twin girls and a boy. The older boy was named Stephen and the girl Sophia. You have an old general who not only helped Christopher in life, but also introduced him to Camille. Stephen Williams, you will definitely be our godfather, and don't even think of arguing. Camille said, rocking the babies in the stroller. Oh yeah, Camille, I wouldn't dream of it. My children have not made me realize that I can't refuse. Grandchildren. At least I'll be able to hear you and Christopher in the cradle. But you trust the old general with your treasures. He winked at her and looked at the babies. How much do they look like their parents? May they do well. He wished the kids in his mind, I will. Don't doubt it. There will be times when you'll have to babysit them. And I'll ask you for it, if you agree, of course. Not that I'll do it. I'll ask you to leave the kids with me for the weekend so you and Christopher can have a vacation. Believe me, Camille, children are an incredible blessing, and thank the higher powers that you are in my life." Stephen brushed a stingy falcon tear from his eye, trying not to let Camille see his weakness. No need to show how lonely he was, though he was lonely. When these two get older, they'll start walking. So you old goat, you'll be running away from them yourself. From such thoughts, the man only smiled and leaned over the stroller and adjusted the blanket. Let them sleep. Sleep is the highest good which is given to man. And then we all grow up to be in a hurry, not realizing why. Is it worth the effort? Stephen Williams and Christopher said that John, the investigator who prosecuted him, he quit. Yeah, filed a report and moved up north. I think he said he had an uncle up there. At least be honest. Seems to me a guy like that can't have any relatives. Come on, you yourself realize that there are many people like John. Just some of them are not in power, do not wear uniforms. Stephen looked at Camille and marveled at how smart she was beyond her years. And even though she had no education, her reasoning was like that of a person who not only had several diplomas behind her, but had lived a life, or rather, several lives. That's how I won't believe in heredity, which is given by past generations. You believe in everything. And it's good that he doesn't. But I'll try to raise a general out of this boy. But at least as long as I have strength, I'll raise him a real cadet, like they raised me at the academy. What about the girl? Or will you neglect her? No, never. She'll make a real battle buddy. That's how you are to Christopher. What's wrong with that? They both laughed, but immediately stopped. You don't want to wake little babies while they're sleeping so sweet. For the parents, for the godfather, because in them, each saw the continuation of their own life, of their own meaning. Returning home from his apprenticeship, Stephen Williams went to a small temple and put a candle for the repose of his favorite women. As promised, I asked the Lord for the best for everyone, what to say for Camille and Christopher. Thank you, Lord, I haven't seen you here before. The priest's words sounded unexpected, and Stephen even trembled. From what a few drops of relaxed wax sprang on his hand. I hardly ever come in here. I just baptized 2 twins here recently. But yeah, I remember you. You were the godfather. But you should come by more often, especially on Sunday. Come to the morning service. Our choir sings beautifully. And in general, you should go to God. Take my word for it as a retired colonel. Stephen Williams looked at the priest in surprise, but did not say anything. Apparently, everyone has his own destiny. Some go north, others turn to God. Maybe he did. Thank you. I'll try to come, but I can't promise. You don't have to promise. You just come. Stephen turned and walked out of the church. And the priest looked at his back through the open church doors for a long time, and then quietly crossed himself, wishing God's protection. Every man needed protection. Whether he believed or not, it did not matter. The road to the temple also led him. Not at once it was worth to pass not one war, loss of wife and betrayal of children to believe in the Lord, to take the tonsure and forgive all his offenders and eventually find peace. Lord, have mercy, save and keep. And it's time for us to think about worldly matters. And the priest went about his business, caring for each of his parishioners, of course, to the best of his ability. Another lost soul has come to God, he thought. So God's work is not in vain. And we are all his helpers. He mentally smiled at his own thoughts and once again thanked God for giving him happiness. Each person, apparently, has his own happiness.